Hi, everybody. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to log in. Welcome to the final day of the 2021 Batonage Forum. It's been a big week, so we thank you all for sticking around to watch all these thoughtful and highly relevant sessions. The conversations have been inspirational, and it's been wonderful to see the friendships among many of the panelists and attendees, which leads me to the theme of today, community, which hits close to home as we approach the first year milestone of the Batonage Mentorship Program, which core committee member Priyanka French will speak to in just a few. On behalf of the Batonage team, we want to extend a big thank you to this incredible community for your ongoing support. We have a few notes from our team first. Thank you to our sponsors, Napa Valley Vintners, Laurent Perrier US, Big Grape, Nomadica, Amarim Cork America, our glassware sponsor, Gabrielle Glass, our venue sponsor, Sonoma Broadway Farms, and our media sponsors, 750 Daily. For the online programming, I know most of us are very familiar with the Zoom platform, but a few reminders here. During the webinar, there are two communication methods available to you, a chat section and a Q&A section. I don't think I need to explain to you all how to use the chat. It's been blowing up these past few days. Just be sure to select everyone, all panelists and attendees, as it can default to panelists only. The Q&A section is where we'd like you to submit your questions to be answered by the speakers during the session. We will be monitoring these and hopefully we'll be able to address all of them, but we also have to keep to our schedule, so please understand if we do not get to all of them. Finally, I would like to draw all of your attention to the code of conduct that you should have received with your confirmation and login links. If not, go ahead and click on the link in the chat and you will be able to review the expectations we have of all attendees during the virtual event and the walk around tasting later today. We are very grateful to Lyft Collective for putting this document together, which we have adapted to fit with our forum. Any questions at all, please email info@batonageforum.com. I would like to welcome Priyanka French, who played a pivotal role in the launch of the mentorship program, to say a few words to the program.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the Batonage Forum. We've had such an amazing last 2 days, and I'm so excited for this panel upcoming right after here and to hopefully see some of you later on at Sonoma Broadway Farms for our Women Winemaker Walk Around Tasting. Mentorship, just as a concept and as something that has been pivotal to my career, is very important to me, and I'm very excited to talk to all of you and kind of give you an update on what we've been able to put together and achieve through the Batonage Mentorship Program. The mentorship program started out as a very simple idea during a panel that I spoke to, which was moderated last year by our keynote speaker this year, Julia Coney. And while we were preparing for that panel, the country had been yet again rocked by the George Floyd incident, and it was not enough to just have conversations. We really felt like there needed to be an action. And so I put forward a very simple idea of offering 2 mentorship opportunities at Signorello, and Julia rightfully said, Priyanka, I need you to think bigger. And think bigger we did. With the support of Katie and Rebecca, our current instigators of the Batonage Forum, Stevie and Sarah, the original founders of this forum, we quickly put together what grew to become our Batonage Mentorship Program. It started out with the formation of our core committee, which includes 5 main members that are also industry area heads. We decided to split our mentorship program across these 5 different industry areas of focus because we realize each of these different aspects of the industry have their own unique problems, their own unique conversations, and their own unique solutions that are needed. So we have Tanya Pitt, who is speaking on our panel today, our wonderful leader for the hospitality division, Sarah Bray, who heads sales and marketing, Stevie Stacionis, who heads retail, Mary Marr, who is our viticulture head, and myself, who is handling cellar and production. With the mentorship program, what we really wanted to offer was flexibility and a solution that fit everyone. We understood that a one-box option is not rightfully acceptable to everyone, and so we wanted to offer as much flexibility as possible during this program. We came up with 3 different levels to offer 3 different methods of interaction between mentees and mentors. Our first level officially launched at the start of 2021. With level 1, we wanted to offer flexible, inclusive options for mentees to reach out to mentors and have direct conversations pertaining to all kinds of questions, from how do I start to get into the industry to this is where I am, how do I take my next step forward? And what we were able to achieve was wilder than all of our wildest dreams. We had 50 amazing mentors participate, not just all from all over the United States, but even internationally. And they interacted with about 150 mentees through one-on-one, 1-hour sessions, group Zoom sessions, and a variety of different methods. Level 2 offers a little bit more of an in-depth relationship. Mentees are paired directly with their mentors, so it's a one-on-one relationship, which offers an in-depth look into skills assessment, resume building, work-life balance, and any kind of personal safe questions that the mentees might have. And today I'm very excited to announce that we will soon be rolling out our level 3 program, which takes into account all of the growth our candidates have had over this last year, and to offer true work opportunities, something that gives them an idea of the aspect of the industry that they truly want to work in. All of the details of our mentorship program can be found on our website. If you go to the Batonage Forum website, there is a tab for the mentorship program that details every level. I cannot say thank you enough to our 50 mentors that have participated, to our 25 mentors that continue to participate in level 2, and to all of you that I hope will reach out to us for support for level 3. If you have any questions, mentorship@batonageforum.com is the best way to get in touch with us. Anyone on the core committee is also available for questions or concerns. What we hope is to have an ever-evolving program. We take our constructive feedback very seriously. And in 2022, we hope that we will be able to offer more categories, more options, a more streamlined process, and to just keep learning as we go. Our promise is to constantly evolve. Our promise is to continue to build on this community that we have so far with Batonage, and your support is invaluable to that. So if you're a part of a company that is hoping to create initiatives like this, please do feel free to reach out to us. If there are any questions, I am more than happy to answer them myself. And Katie and Rebecca and the team of Batonage, of course, does fantastic work on the back end to make sure this program runs smoothly. So without much further ado, I'm very excited for this panel, and I will turn it over to Mariam and the rest of our panelists. Thank you so much.
I'll do a quick intro of Miriam and the team. But first session is mentorship, the community building block. So to start, Miriam Ahmed owns a collaborative consulting firm, Miriam & Company, that specializes in project management, programs and experiences, and strategic planning for food, wine, and philanthropic businesses. Before Miriam & Company, she spent 5 years as a director and entrepreneur at the Culinary Institute of America. Most often, Miriam's work takes place at the intersection of chefs, sommeliers, activists, sustainability experts, creatives, and organizations committed to equitable access and diversity within their communities. In 2020, Miriam created and co-founded the Diversity in Wine Leadership Forum with Elaine Chacon Brown, which brings together leaders of organizations with a commitment to equity and diversity in the wine industry and acts as a centralized list of ongoing initiatives. Tahera Habibi. Tahera is an esteemed sommelier, founder, and entrepreneur. In 2017, she launched Hue Society as a safe space for the community to learn, commune, and find resources in one place. She created a cultural space for the Black and Brown community to share their wine developments and experiences. Tahera is the first Black woman to grace the cover of Wine Enthusiast's 40 Under 40 list. She was featured in VinePair, Wine Enthusiast, Wine Spectator, Vogue, and Imbibe magazine, to name just a few. Tahera co-founded the Roots Fund, a nonprofit that will create new educational pathways, financial assistance, and career opportunities for Black and Indigenous people to be successful in the wine industry. Carrie Rao is a proud Cree food and wine professional living and working in Toronto, Ontario. She is a certified CAP sommelier and WSET instructor for levels 1 and 2 at IWEG Drinks Academy. Carrie graduated WSET diploma in 2020, completed level 2 from International Sommelier Guild, and is a member of the Court of Master Sommeliers. She is currently working as a certified as a Red Seal chef in recipe research and development at a large test kitchen that specializes in product development. A co-founder of Winequity, a not-for-profit focusing on uplifting and amplifying the voices of BIPOC wine professionals. She is very passionate about career development, mentorship, and wine education. And last but not least, Tonya Pitts from our very own Batonage Mentorship Program. Tonya is a certified sommelier through the Court of Master Sommeliers and is a member of Les Dames du Scaffier International. Her 30-year career has been shaped by women chefs and restaurant owners. As sommelier and wine director for One Market Restaurant in San Francisco, Tonya curated a wine list with a bold style and flavor profile, including offerings by women, Black, and Latino winemakers. Since 2012, Tonya's wine programs have received Best of Award of Excellence from Wine Spectator. Tonya is an active philanthropist and mentor. She established Women in Wine to improve representation in the industry, and she joined Wine Unify as an ambassador, advisory board member, and mentor to people in the BIPOC and LGBTQ communities who are pursuing careers in the industry. Miriam, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I am going to bring the panelists up on screen in just a moment, but thank you for the amazing introductions, Ella. Thank you to Team Batonage for having us and for putting mentorship first on Community Day, because it is a very important piece of community building. To set the stage for today's panel, I just want to offer a few opening remarks for consideration throughout today's conversation. Please feel free to ask questions. We're going to be monitoring the chat as well as the Q&A. But we have a lot to get through in a short amount of time, as all the other panelists have expressed as well. Over the past year, we have seen many formalized mentorship programs come to fruition, both to open doors for passionate individuals, to help elevate people or transition people within the wine industry or into the wine industry, and of course, to create change within our industry. All the change we know is needed. But I would want to ask us all to be wary of creating models of mentorship that comply with an already broken system, or that create an imbalance in our communities. Intent and outcome do not always go hand in hand, and we know this. A lot of us are doing this work and know this. In that way, though, formalizing mentorship within the wine industry is no small feat. And the work being done by these organizations and on an individual basis that I am honored to see on a day-to-day basis is incredible, which is why I'm excited to host this panel and these panelists specifically. Much like allyship, mentorship is not about centering yourself. It's about centering the betterment and growth of your community and our community in the wine industry. To be effective, it cannot be performative. The mentee-mentor relationship is rooted in commitment to work together to achieve things greater than one might have been able to do alone. In that way, mentorship is a huge building block of community. And I wanted to kick us off by letting us start the panel with that groundwork and framework in mind. Without further ado, I'd like to bring my panelists on screen. Tahara, Tonya, Carrie, who have all been very eloquently introduced by Ella. Hi. Yes, from everywhere.
Hello.
Two of us calling in from hotel rooms. Two of us from home. I love it. Thank you all for being here. We were very thoroughly introduced, but I would love for each of you just to acknowledge the organizations that you're representing today, as well as any formal mentorship positions that you hold. And Carrie, would you start us off?
Sure. So I haven't met a ton of people in the US yet, but this is great. I'm so excited to be a part of this and to meet everybody. So we are located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I'm a co-founder of Winequity. And Winequity aims to amplify BIPOC wine professionals across Canada. So right now we're building a national directory that we can connect and network with and build a community. We also built out a mentorship program, which is great, which is in flux and constantly changing and evolving, which is amazing. And we also like fundraise for scholarships so that we can kind of tear down those barriers to access for wine education. So that's what there are three big pillars. And then of course, advocacy is sprinkled across all of that as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're
Tahara?
Sure. As was announced, I am the founder of Hugh Society. So we have chapters across the country now that focus on mentorship and mentors, some of the most elite of us in the wine industry, if that's a thing. I also have formed mentor circles in partnership with SomCon. So we every other month, it's a bi-monthly hour and a half that we spend together. We have people sign up for different rooms based on their interest. It's not based on anything outside of that. And you never know who's in the room. So they're super cool. We usually have someone who is more a leader in the space to lead the room, but it's very much group mentorship. And we are very conscious of power dynamics in that way.
Thank you. Tonya?
My name is Tonya Pitts, and I am an advisor as well as a mentor with Wine Unify, which is an organization that was started by Mary Margaret Mechanic and Martin Reyes, and also Dylan Proctor. And this all came about through the pandemic. And when they reached out to me and said, we are starting an organization that will be reaching out and mentoring people of color and LGBTQ folks in the community that have an interest in becoming a part of the wine industry, restaurants, however that looks, whether it's the back of the house, front of the house, within all those entities. And I said, absolutely. And I told them a story about a young man who would come into my restaurant and had been brought in by his mentors, and he essentially really wanted nothing to do with me because he just had not seen anyone like me that looked like him in the position that I was in. And I'd always mentored people anyway, but that's what played in my head when Martin asked me. And that was that. I said, of course, whatever you need me to do, I'm there. And I've always been kind of on the sidelines with Badinage Forum since the very beginning, and just being a part of the team and helping to push things forward. And when they asked me to head up hospitality, I was blown away. And I said yes. And so here we are. And
Here we are.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. I'm not going to get into everything right now because we'll get into the nitty gritty of things as we talk. And
That's right.
my eyes are welling up already, so I may have to go get a tissue.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'll give you time to get a tissue. Your work is so important, Tonya. And I know it goes beyond all of us, actually. I know it goes beyond the formal organizational work that we're doing. In the true spirit of measuring our impact, many of us have already acknowledged that this is a constant learning opportunity. Priyanka actually said it at the very beginning, and all of you know that there are things that have been done that are wonderful and things that have been done that can be improved, et cetera. And so we thought, since we know we have several formal mentors and formal mentees on this talk today, we would ask the group to take a quick poll. And this poll will be provided to all leaders of organizations and, of course, any mentee that would like the information after this talk. This is about understanding if what we're setting out to achieve is what we're actually achieving. Is this working, not in a philosophical sense, but in an actual sense? And so it's a very quick poll. There are 3 questions. I think Ella is going to launch it for us. And just answer, if you didn't participate in a mentorship program, you can hit no, and then you don't have to submit any of the other questions. but go ahead and fill these out. We'll give you just a couple minutes. I think a couple of the questions aren't optional. So if you hit no, you can just do no, no, and other. We're going to close the poll in about 30 seconds. Thank you all for participating. Okay, Ella, could you go ahead and share the poll with us? Thank you. Okay, so less than half of us in this room did a formal mentorship, but 42% is a great number. That's amazing. Thank you for participating as a mentee or mentor. I know there's going to be a lot of no's here because there was a requirement to answer that question, but 28% completely satisfied. That's an important number for anyone leading an organization right now. And thank you for the write-ins. We'll make sure that we review those later and that everyone gets the answers that you provided. We really appreciate that. I'm seeing communication, expectations and guidelines, and established goals as the highest areas of improvement, with 58% of folks putting other, again, also thrown by that, we have to answer a question. So I'm looking at expectations and guidelines as something that folks who are leading mentorship programs could start there and receive feedback from your mentees and mentors. All right, thank you so much. It's nice to have some really great feedback. That's not open on my phone. Okay, so let's jump in really quickly here. Tahira, could you just explain to us why mentorship is important to you and really like how it affects you personally?
Sure. I mean, I don't think that I've ever had a life outside of mentorship. So I just grew up that way. I grew up in a community, and so that's how I function. But the most important thing is I am an organizer. I am a builder, and you can't build communities without having intimacy with them. And so you can't. You have to be in the community and understanding what the needs are in order to mentor people. If we're saying that mentorship and its idea is helping someone become the best version of themselves, you have to be the best version of yourself in order to offer that. If we're saying that mentors are supposed to challenge you, challenge your limitations, challenge your thinking, challenge assumptions that you may have, you as a mentor have to have done that work. And so for me, it's just really important to be able to, as I grow and develop, pass that along and allow other people to the space to grow and develop, even if it's not directly, even if I just create a program that helps them to get to that place. Because what we're doing is building up the most vulnerable of us, right? And so if you don't have an intimate relationship with those people, it's kind of hard to do that. And I think for me, it's just really important to make sure like we're always centering the most vulnerable of us. And that's just, what mentorship is at its core. It's about challenging and building and being the best version, not only of yourself, but helping that person become that same thing. So it's a two-way street for me.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Tonya, you are a mentor to a lot of people, but you also bring your menteeship into a lot of the conversations that you have. Can you tell us what being mentored has meant to your career?
I didn't set out to do this at all. I didn't set out to be a part of the hospitality or wine community. I was actually going to university, and my first thought was I was going into law, and that was really what I was focusing on. But I knew that I needed to be able to make money for myself, and that's how I got involved in restaurants. But I caught the wine bug because I loved food and wine early on. And so I had people around me that noticed and realized that I had an interest and chose to help me develop that. My first mentor was a Black queer male, and I had lost track of him, and I found him again. One of the things I said was thank you, and he said, you have nothing to thank me for, you did everything. And I said, well, actually, if you hadn't taken the time to show me that this was, a reality, something that I could do for myself, if I chose to be professional within a restaurant, wine, all of that, I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have been able to take that and move forward. But even within that, all of the other people saw what I was doing and kind of took me under their wing and showed me more. But even still, I had no plans to stay. I didn't see myself or anyone that looked like me really in that space. And so for me, it's about making people comfortable and having them realize that this is for them and they can be here too if they have an interest and a love, and we need to nurture and cultivate that. And that's why I do the things that I do. And I still talk to, my mentors today, because there are things that come up that I have questions about, as I hit one plateau to the other. And people have to realize as well that those that are around us, when they give you those nuggets of inspiration and their knowledge of what they've gone through, they're mentoring as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like there's no real defined timeline for mentorship. It can be 5 minutes or it could be a lifetime, but it's what the outcome is, right? Carrie, you had a really great story about the first time you became a formal mentee, and I'd love for you to share that story with us and how it influenced your idea of community mentorship.
Hi, yeah, sure. I was in a weird spot in my life where I was very, very unhappy with being back of house. We all know the restaurants can be a tough place to work. And I think after, 15 years of slogging through that, I was kind of looking for a change to go to front of house, maybe, to really harness all my wine knowledge and to see where that would lead. And so I was also coming from a pretty bad work culture as well, and trying to understand what I needed to go forward. So I tried to look for a mentorship program that would work. And really back then, this was about 6 years ago, there wasn't anything for the hospitality industry. So I ended up signing up with a Women in Leadership program that I believe has different chapters in different provinces here in Canada. And it was interesting. I mean, I felt very out of place when I went in there. It was a lot of people that worked in the corporate sector and finance, law, definitely not a ton of BIPOC people there. And it was hard for me to really connect, to find, common ground. I mean, there are certain things that are translatable across every industry. But I was assigned to a wonderful mentor. I'm actually still friends with her. She was great, but I think she really had a hard time trying to connect what she did as coaching for a large bank, coaching her salespeople, with trying to figure out what my needs or wants could be and how we could communicate. So it was incredibly tough, but it made me understand that that I was definitely looking for a formal mentorship, hopefully in my industry.
Yeah. I think that is a great segue into some of the challenges of mentorship. I think we should be very candid here. There are plenty of challenges that come with mentorship. I think also with this piece, we're talking about the drivers behind mentorship. And when we talked, all of us, we talked about like the pros and cons, but I can kick us off and then I want to open it to the group to just chime in. But some of the feedback that I've gotten and just kind of observed too is, what do we do when someone wants to mentor and it's for the glory and not for the mentee or the community? That's a challenge of mentorship, I think. Does anyone else want to lend some challenges? Tahira's like, oh, she just said that. I'm just saying, let's talk about it. Mentorship is a commitment. She's like, I'm not coming off mute. Let's talk about it.
I think for me, my biggest thing is making sure that I'm giving people the time and the space to grow. And it's not about me, it's about them, you know, and it's not for the glory. It's because I don't want anybody to walk the road that I walked. And having a sense of isolation and that you belong, but you don't really belong, you know, that's what it's all about for me. And that can be anyone within our sphere that wants to be here and be a part of things. You know, it's not about the glory, you know, it's about the work and touching people and helping people and building community. You know, that is what it's about.
Definitely.
It's not about being on a bunch of magazine covers and having a bunch of articles and stuff written about you. That's all fine and great and well, because we want to get the word out to people, but that's not what it's about.
Right.
Yeah.
We're coming back to centering community and not centering ourselves. And I agree with you. I totally agree with you, Tonya. We have to share these initiatives. I think it's more so less about the initiatives and more just about what are the drivers behind mentorship. And, you know, Carrie and I spoke about that community that she brought up. And part of the challenge was sometimes it felt like people were there for a resume builder. And I think it's just important to say. I think for everyone who is considering mentorship and the opportunity sounds exciting in large part because you will be publicly acknowledged, it might be a really great opportunity for you to take on a mentee first behind the scenes and then join a larger organization so that you can learn and you know you're completely ready. And I'm happy to say it as the moderator. I'm not going to put the panelists on the spot. So it does move us into the next section of what I wanted to talk about, which is, Tahira, you brought it up, two-way streets. Mentorship is not a one-way street. I'd love for you, Carrie, to just quickly tell us how you hold yourself accountable as a mentor.
How I hold myself. So for me, you know, with Benequity, we have built out a mentorship program that I'm actually not one of the mentors through that. But for my personal, to be a mentor, I do a lot of it through education, being a teacher. So it's really important for me as a teacher. That is a way of mentoring people as well. It is opening up a relationship. We are communicating weekly. My goal is to help them successfully go through the course, learn what they can, and then move on if they get a certification. And hopefully that helps them with jobs. It helps them with different opportunities in the industry. So for me, how I hold myself accountable is definitely to make sure that I am committed to those relationships. You have to set boundaries, but I often make sure that they know that I am accessible after class to ask questions. Not everybody feels comfortable asking things in a classroom setting. Another way I try to teach, I mean, of course, right now we are, you know, doing everything virtually because that's what we have to. But in a classroom setting, I don't like to stand above people and kind of look down. I really don't enjoy that. I often sit with everybody in kind of a circle, and then that way I feel like it's more of an open dialogue. I also make sure that I'm up to date on my knowledge. You know, every class that I'm teaching, things change. I want to make sure I go over and review everything before I pass it on. So it's a constantly, you know, a source of studying for me. And when you teach, you are teaching yourself as well as you're giving back that information. So definitely keeping up on top of trends. And luckily that ties in with my job as a chef and chasing food and beverage trends. I read as much as possible just to make sure that I'm current. And I follow people that are inspirational as well, because you're constantly learning from others in our community. So that's really important to me. And understanding, I guess my final point is understanding that everybody learns differently as well. So it's a lot of patience, and it's trying to identify the needs of people without them having to ask, I think. So, yeah.
Said like a true hospitality professional.
Oh,
Anticipation. I love those, all of those things, all those accountability measures. They're very, very important. And I think you're uniquely positioned as an educator, because you are, at the end of the day, responsible for what someone has learned at the end of a set amount of time. So you're primed to be able to do that in a mentorship relationship too. Tonya, can you talk to us about your accountability measures as a mentor and a mentee?
For me, it's about making sure that I make time and space to talk with all of my mentees and just check in, because it's not always about what they're working on. It's just life in general and what's going on. So I do a lot of that. I'm really conscious, and I try to be in tune with other people, not to absorb their energy that way, but to be conscious of what's going on, body language, tone of voice, all of that. If I haven't heard from you, and we're supposed to have a check-in once every 2 weeks, something like that, I just, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Haven't heard from you. How's studying going? How's just life going in general? And it all comes tumbling out. And that's a part of being a mentor as well. It's not all about your occupation. It's about you and your well-being as well as a person. And so for me, it's being conscious of making sure that I'm keeping up with everybody and checking in. Yeah.
I love that. Mentorship is not just about your occupation, it's also about well-being and just who you are as a person.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point for sure. Accountability for me, I think sometimes it's as simple. You just said, I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks. I'll set up like a kind of a quarterly check-in or every 6 months. I really love mentoring in the transition period, someone who's exploring coming into the wine industry. And I love that because the possibilities are kind of endless, but it means accountability. It means checking in because there's a lot of research to be done and a lot of exploring to be done. Tahira, aside from accountability, which we know is really important, do you have thoughts on what else might be required of mentors and mentees? And I don't know if you saw the question in the chat from Jamie, but if you're willing to.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay, I'll read that. I'll read that just after. If there's anything you want to add, in addition to accountability, what's required from a mentor or mentee?
I think obviously a mentor or mentee relationship is about power dynamics, right? Like you're in the mentor position because they view you as being in a position of power, whatever that means. If that means financial, if that means resources, if that means you're able to connect them with someone else, you still have in this particular situation a power dynamic. How are you wielding that, right? The other thing is for people who mentor people who are outside of their outliers, do you have the tools to do that? That's really important, right? Because like Tonya talked about, as far as like your mental health and your well-being, a lot of the stuff, if we're talking specifically about the wine industry coming into this space, a lot of it is mental. And if you're not able to check in with that, if you don't have the tools to check in and say, hey, I know this was a really rough week for your community, right? If you're not in that community, if you don't have those tools or even the wherewithal to even think through that, then you shouldn't be mentoring people who are outside of that space, because that's harmful? Like, are you creating harm and just holding this resource that you have over them, and not in a malicious way, but it's effectively why they're still following you. Otherwise, what else are you contributing to them? What is your contribution to this space? What is, is it saviorism? Is it absolution? Is it your ego? You know, you have to check in with all of those things, and be willing to co-labor with people. I think that that's a big thing in this industry. People don't want to co-labor. They want, I'm here and you're there, and this is what it is. And that goes all the way through the industry, all the way to the top. It's I'm here and you're there, and this is what it is. Are you willing to, you know, be like, nah, we good. We're on the same level. I'm going to give you the same thing that I have. I have power, you have power. I grow, you grow, right? Can you check in with those kinds of things, particularly for communities that have been marginalized, or, you know, who have those kind of identities, marginalized identities? Do you have that tool set? That is super important. Otherwise, there is going to be a disconnect somewhere. There's going to be like, yeah, you gave me this resource, that's great. Now I have to go to the next resource to get the other part that I needed from the leader or the mentor. Like, you know, it's kind of like, how can you be, how can you be the best version, or help them be the best version if you lack that intimacy with that community or that person? It's not there. So you need to really be aware of that.
Definitely. Thank you for answering that question. You answered Jamie's question, I think. Jamie's question, I'm just going back up because the chat just started really moving. How do we balance the intimacy of a true mentorship relationship and the inevitable power differential that can make people feel distant? So I think you answered that quite eloquently. And, you know, there's more coming in the chat. I have to take a second away from the chat so I can make sure that we get through the questions that I had, because everyone's getting us where we're going, which I really appreciate. So, I mean, Tahira, you said, like, it's not just about this power dynamic of I am XYZ, let's say, like, I am more accomplished, or I am an established leader, or etc. Right? The higher up you go, the busier you get. This conference is focused on women in the wine industry. We're already making cents on the dollar, and now we're also talking about volunteering our time. None of these mentorship positions are paid positions. So we've now got to squeeze more money out of less money effectively as women, and also do it in probably less time given the amount of responsibilities that fall to us as women. And we've got to carve out time to help make, let's just say, the world a better place. And that is a huge amount of responsibility, in addition to now worrying truly over, am I doing this effectively? Am I not causing harm? Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for the community? There are so many questions. And yes, Rania makes a great point. We also have to center ourselves on our wellness, and our family's wellness too. So I wanted to just bring in a question I didn't have, but it's coming up for me in what you just said, Tahira. So I know this will kind of roll us into some feedback that I wanted to hear from all of you from the programs you're participating in. But right now, with all the organizational work going on, and I'm speaking from the position of co-founding the Diversity in Wine Leadership Forum, all of these organizations we're talking about today are committed not only to creating mentorship opportunities, but also to creating access for the BIPOC and diverse community. So that intersection changes things, because the power dynamics, like Tahira said, change. I think it's just really important to acknowledge that outside of just the feedback from two organizations, we're not just talking about creating mentorship, again, like I said, within a structure that we all know well, which is the wine industry. We're talking about creating mentorship for a marginalized community, which takes a lot of work on a personal level as both a mentee and a mentor. because we have to understand the limitations that already exist within our industry. And we're trying to break down these barriers. But I just wanted to highlight that's an intersection coming up. And I think actually that would be great to move us into some feedback. I definitely want to talk about the roles and responsibilities of mentor and mentee a little bit further than we have gone already. But let's just keep with this theme of understanding what we're trying to do is a really big feat. I want to ask Carrie and Tahara first about the feedback methods that you've employed for your mentorship programs. I think this is paramount to any existing formalized mentorship program, especially one that's emerged in the past 24 months, and especially in this industry geared toward the BIPOC and diverse community. So Carrie, could you provide an example of feedback that you've received from either a mentee or a mentor through the Vinequity mentorship program that you launched in July?
Well, sure. So we launched our first mentorship round back in January. And the way that we're structuring that is to get 2 full runs within a year. So we get them to apply from January till June, and then the beginning of July till December. So we are right in this weird moment where we've learned everything. Our first round is finishing up, and our second round, we're just getting applications and we're getting ready to launch. And have we learned a lot of stuff between that? Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I think that when Vinequity launched, the fact that we were offered mentors that really wanted to help the BIPOC community, we jumped at it. It was something that while we were fundraising, that we were able to offer programming and to figure out, we were like, of course, mentorship in the community is a huge asset. So when we started putting that program together, we were creating it from the ground up. So we were trying to figure out things as we went along. But what we've learned from that, some of our feedback was that maybe it lacked a little bit in structure. And I think that our initial goal was to let them figure out their intimate relationship together, of course, with codes of conduct and boundaries that we had set in place. We vetted both sides. We made sure that we were very transparent, but we thought by trying to structure people, especially in a mentee-mentor relationship, that it might be tough for them to start off. And actually the feedback was the opposite. They wanted to have a little bit more structure. And I think it's just because people are busy. This is, again, something that they're doing on top of their jobs and their lives. And of course, it's about balance and mental health and wellness and all of that. So from there, our next round, we are putting in structure, and we are making sure that the mentee can give us a lot of feedback that they can tick off as they go along. So our mentors are asked to communicate with our mentees twice a month. That's the commitment that we ask. And if it's above and beyond or a little bit less, they can decide what they want together in their relationship. So that's great. So everything has been running along. We'll find out a little bit more once we finish that. The other feedback that we had was technology issues. Not everyone has access to Zoom accounts. So that was really important for us to really understand what people were able to use, because we couldn't get together in person, especially in Canada, since we're under crazy lockdown. But so we've put together a list of different ways that you can communicate by email, text, phone. We'd love to have face-to-face. So Google Meets is free. It's available for everybody. So that was really important for our feedback as well. And again, we're still learning as we go.
What about when you were sourcing mentors? How was that process for Vinequity?
So in the beginning, our first round, the Canadian Master Sommelier contingent approached us because they knew that they had skills and resources to help. And of course, this is all the way through the Me Too Matter, Black Lives Matter, and the Me Too movement. It was pretty hairy, pretty crazy. But because a lot of them in Toronto, and the 7 of us that make up Vinequity were a part of that community, we knew each other quite well, and we knew that they were genuinely there to help out. But we also realized that we needed more BIPOC mentors. That's the biggest challenge of us building our directory, is reaching from Vancouver, the West Coast, all the way to the East Coast to try to find BIPOC community members. And it's really, really hard. We are such a big country, but we have small pockets of population all the way through. So trying to communicate and find people has been a challenge. And that's why we're trying to build and bring people up into leadership to get BIPOC people up there so that they can continue this programming. It's really important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, my voice went out for a second. Thank you so much, Carrie. Tehera, can you tell us about the launch of Mentor Circles and kind of that collaboration with SAMCON, maybe something that surprised you, some things that you've learned?
Yeah, I think when I wanted to do Mentor Circles, it was really about, again, creating something that would offer quick, accessible. Everything that I do is centered around community and access, right? So I wanted it to be equitable. I wanted it to be accessible and quick. And so we decided, okay, we can do this. Initially, it was once a month. It's just an hour. We get people who want to sign up, and then we get people who are interested in the topic of being, whatever the mentor room was. And so we have a room for winemaking. We have a room for sales and a room for somm tips, a room for, whatever it is that you're interested in at the time. And the great thing about it is you can bounce from room to room every month. You don't have to stay in the same space. So if you want to go back to the same room, you do. If you, in the next month, if you want to go to somewhere else because you got the information that you needed from that, that's great. But that's what I love about group mentorship is we really focused on making sure everybody kind of felt comfortable at the same level. Like you didn't go into a room and you're kind of like apprehensive and you're like, oh, this is such and such. It's like we break all of that down. And so you don't know who's going to be in the room with you. And we encourage everyone to mentor each other in the rooms, right? Because everyone has ideas. And I think a big part of forming these mentorship groups and all the rest of that is, I think it's two things. One is, who are you allowing to mentor, and are you making people feel like they can be mentors, right? Like, is it only the best of us and the best of everything that we do that can be mentors? And I don't believe that. I feel like you can learn from anybody. You have something to offer. And the other thing is, do the mentees feel comfortable? Are they going to ask for what they need from you? Do they feel comfortable enough with you in that space? A lot of times people feel more comfortable with people who look like them. That's just a very, very true statement. It's a difficult statement, but it's the truth. You feel more comfortable with people who look like you because you bring in socioeconomics, you bring in language, you bring in all of these things. What are the barriers that are going to make mentorship uncomfortable for your mentee? How can we break that down? And so even with Roots Fund, Roots scholars get one-on-one mentors. We had a ton of people sign up for that, and we do polls and we ask, like, how can this be improved and all that stuff. And it's just, a lot of it is language barriers, right? Like having someone who is out of your demographic or whatever, there's a language barrier. And, when we talk about demographics, it's not just race. It's also, LGBTQ plus, all of it. So all of those things have to be taken into account when you're trying to form a mentorship program. Like, how can we make this the most equitable, accessible, and provocative thing without, it doesn't have to be this grandiose, oh my God, this is a huge program, blah, blah, blah. Like, it can be effective with just, a group of people who have the same goals. And I just encourage people to kind of think through that, are you taking up space in resources from other groups? Could you join a group and help them launch, could you pull your resources into an existing organization that is doing what needs to be done in the industry? Or, you know, are you taking up space for the sake of taking up space to say, hey, you know, I'm a mentor, I have a mentorship program, or, you know, I'm doing all of these great things, but is it effective? And that's what I try to measure everything by. Is this effective for the community? And if not, how can we get to that place? If that means bringing this down and moving them somewhere else, we're going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about access and creating equity, then the mentorship model has to change, because it's a power dynamic of I'm here, you're here. So if we're creating equity at the same time of wanting to bring people up, we have to be mindful that we're not only creating programs that are hierarchical in this way, that reinforce the power dynamics that got us here in the first place. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is on point, Tara. I love, Tonya, you are a huge participant in these programs as a mentor. You have to have had some experiences this year that you've learned from, maybe that the organizations have learned from. Are there some best or worst practices that you've seen out there?
One of the big things when we launched the Badinage Forum mentorship was we had an overwhelming response from women that wanted to be a part of things and be mentored. And instead of going, we went through all of the applications and we just decided to have everyone be a part of things. And it was a huge undertaking, and I think it was bigger than we had even thought. And so some people's rosters for mentees was pretty large, and we learned our lesson, I think, from that, and not letting people choose necessarily who they wanted to go with. And we allowed people to choose their mentors, which most people don't do that, but we did that. And we learned our lesson, I think, on that one, on the first go round, because 25 people is a lot of people to have as mentees, you know? And so.
Especially if they're expecting one-on-one. A lot of there's
Yeah,
only
but you know
30
what,
days
though?
in the month,
But
usually.
we did not offer necessarily one-on-one. We offered group. And then if you wanted to continue, we would do one-on-one. And that's what we did. And, you know, in the middle of the pandemic, we got a lot of balls in the air and everything else that we're all working on. As well, as you said, you know, it's not a paid thing, right? So just making sure that you're taking care of business and giving everyone what they need and facilitating that. And so it was a lot. It was super fulfilling, you know, and I think that a lot was achieved and a lot of people got what they needed at that point, but then it also got them to another point of moving forward. And if that wasn't enough for them, having them go elsewhere, but also giving them the tools and the information of where to go next.
Yeah.
But the other really great thing about all of that is some people who decided whoever they were partnered with, they're continuing with, not just through the organization, but also on their own. And I thought that was really impactful. And one thing I wanted to circle back to Tahira, when you made the comment about who is a mentor and what does that mean? And, you know, are you this person that's been put on this pedestal, and are you the only person that can help someone and mentor people? And I agree with you. We have to come out of that mindset, which is why when I put together my mentors for Badinage for level 1, when I went out and I asked some people to come and be a part of things, they were like, well, what do you mean? I mean, I look up to you and I, you know, I consider you to be a mentor to me. And I was like, I am, but you have so much to offer. You are such a knowledgeable person. You can mentor people. And I went into my whole spiel about, you know, it could be just a word, a phrase, just taking a moment to have a cup of coffee with someone, to listen to them and to give them words of acknowledgement. It's an affirmation. You are mentoring somebody.
Mm.
And I had a lot of those with people. And it's important, you know, people have to feel empowered. If you do not feel empowered, how can you move forward? How can you do anything?
Mm.
You know? So
I don't want to cut you off, Tonya, but I think it's really important. We're spending a lot of time on the mentor, and I want to just acknowledge something right here with what you're saying of this belief around sort of this need for affirmation. Yes, you can be a mentor. In the same vein, I have had people say, I don't want to take up space as a mentee. I want to leave room for others. But in that moment, they're acknowledging that they themselves would want to be a mentee. I think taking up space is hard. We're all women of color. I think I can say that safely here. Taking up space is hard. And I don't know, it's very similar. It's the same principle. It's just the difference of mentee or mentor. So if there are people watching now or later that are thinking, I would like to be a mentor, but I'm not sure, or I'd like to be a mentee, that first inclination is all you need. And then Tonya will tell you, yeah, you should totally be a mentor, and you should definitely be a mentee if you feel so inclined, because I think that taking up the space is one of the hurdles we overcome when we're talking especially about formalized mentorship, but even in our day-to-day. I mean, what you were doing for those folks by telling them they could be mentors is mentoring them. You're elevating them. That's a mentor, right? Thank you.
pretty cool. So yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think also acknowledging in that situation, maybe you had the time, right? Bringing it back to balancing ourselves and our wellness. But if you hadn't, another great opportunity for mentorship is to say, I know you would like me to do this. I don't have the bandwidth right now, but I know someone who would be perfect. And let me make sure they're comfortable and that they have the bandwidth. And then I'd love to nominate them and put them in this position. Because that's also mentorship, and it's centering yourself and your wellness at the same time.
If you don't fill up your own cup, how can you fill up someone else's cup?
Definitely.
You know,
we have a comment in the chat from Sarah. She says maybe the program should be set up so one person can be both. So I think both a mentee and a mentor, because you have something to offer and to learn. And I think that goes back to the two-way streets, right? I think if you're going into mentorship thinking you have nothing to learn, maybe don't. Maybe take a pause. If you're alive, you have something to learn. So we always have more to learn than we have thus far. Elaine says that a lot in our work together. So I totally agree, Sarah. Or maybe as a mentor, you're going in approaching it as I am also a mentee in this situation, and mentees hopefully I provided a scenario and situation where they feel comfortable enough to be empowered to help the mentor learn as well, right? Breaking down those power dynamics. There's a lot of fear on failing as a mentee and how to keep up with the expecting level of knowledge. I feel it could be a lot of pressure to elevate yourself and failing on the attempt, from Anita. That's a great comment. Does anyone want to address that?
Yeah, I think I just read that. I think that we need to understand that failing is not an identity. It's a moment, and it's a learning moment. That's it. It's just literally just a moment. You failed one moment, or you didn't meet an expectation, a moment. That's it. After that, there's nothing after that. What did you learn from that moment? And now you're not going to fail again because you're not in the same place you were when you failed. But I think that sometimes we take on failure as identities. I'm a failure. I'm this, I'm that, and absorbing that. And you don't have to do that. You have to absorb the lesson from those moments where you may not have been your best self or met the expectation that you set, but also who's setting those expectations. Are they within your actual bandwidth, or are your expectations somebody else's? So I think when we think about failure, we have to like start redefining what that is and what that looks like.
Yeah, and creating measures of success for ourselves that we're comfortable with. We don't have to be out there sharing our own KPIs. I feel very happy mentoring offline. I'm happy with that. That's my level of success. Just getting comfortable with what feels right for you. And again, your situation, we're all balancing a lot. Thank you all for that. I think, Carrie, I know that you had some really strong examples, and then I want to move into talking about a little bit of the mentee relationship. Carrie, will you give us the examples you got from Vinequity? I'll take a good or we need to learn from this example.
Well, the funny enough, representation was big on both sides. So representation and underrepresentation. So we had a lot of positive feedback from our mentees that were very, very happy that even though we did have a lot of, white MSs that were, giving their time, and other mentors in the program, that when we found some people of color that were mentors that were included into the program, they were very happy because they felt more comfortable being able to have conversations and ask what they wanted to ask. And but then on the other side, we had a couple of mentees that weren't successful getting into the program, and it's really due to how many people we have. We can't expect all of our mentors to take on a whole bunch of people. And if you don't fill out your application the right way, or, there's a vetting process that we go through to make sure that the resources we have, it all works. And we did have one particular mentee that felt that there wasn't enough Black representation, and they were upset with that they thought we should just focus on that instead of people of color, the broad range, because then it took away from the momentum that was happening. And that was really hard for us to address, because we are taking a wide range of different backgrounds. But that's what we set out to do. And we explained to them that that was a really tough hurdle to tackle. So, I mean, we want to help everybody and we want to please everybody. But if it's not successful, it's not successful. And trying to let people know that, I think just turning down people was really hard.
Yeah, definitely. What about a piece of positive?
And for positivity, just like I said, just having more representation across the board. When we first started, it seemed like a lot of like sommeliers, like that kind of area in the restaurant. And it didn't necessarily, translate to having everybody be people of color for mentors, but just different skills and resources that they could access. So we try to match up different mentees with what skill sets every mentor has. And I think that we realized that it's beyond just restaurants. We were missing out on the business side of wine, talking about wine agencies, importing, all of that, even to agriculture and wine growing and all of that. So we really had to search out to find more representation for our wine community. And, the search continues for more BIPOC mentors as well, because that's kind of what we are trying to champion right now.
Definitely. I love that. Okay. We've spent a lot of time talking about the mentor, which is a vital role to these formalized mentorship programs. I think it's important that we talk about the mentee as well. I asked everyone about how we hold ourselves accountable as mentors, but I think, could we speak a little bit to accountability on the mentee side? This is not within a framework of failure, just acknowledging Anita's earlier comment in the chat. This is, how can we help the mentees benefit best from what we have to offer? And in that way, how are we creating accountability measures for them? I can start. This is an open question for everyone to answer, so please jump in. One of the things that I really like to do when I'm working with mentees is to ask them to come with 5 bullet points or questions for our session, at least. And in that vein, I'm creating some structure, which goes back to what Carrie was saying, that people want a little bit of more of the expectations and guidelines. That was part of the poll as well. And it also just immediately clears the cobwebs. So helps them get focused. So that's something that I ask. The reason being is not only is my time valuable and they get 100% of it when I'm sitting with them, but their time is valuable. I want them to think about their time being valuable. So using the time they have for very specific questions that will help get to the next mile marker, for me, is a really important form of accountability with my mentees. Does anyone else want to jump in?
Sure, actually, that is really important to us for our mentorship program. So what we've done is, before we start off our mentorship program where we start matching people, we started doing some webinars to really talk about the careers in wine and education, so they could understand when they go to fill out their application, that they can focus a little bit on what they want to get from this relationship. And once that happened, and once we went ahead and we were able to successfully pair up, it's just to get them ready to also make sure that they fill out the application. We had a lot of applications that weren't completed. And so we really wanted to make sure that they understood what they were undertaking. After the people that didn't get paired up, we didn't just stop and say, I'm sorry, here's your rejection letter, you can't continue. We offer like tasting and coaching webinars to help them focus a little bit, ask us questions about what kind of direction they need to go and what areas need improvement. And so that was really important for us to do as well. And we ended up getting a lot of great feedback from mentees from that. So it's just constantly trying to move them forward, and it's really the focus. I think a lot of people just, that applied just wanted to learn everything they possibly could from their mentor as far as wine. But, there's so many facets, there's so many jobs within this industry that you really have to focus on what you're working for. Education is not cheap. So if we're going to put you into a program and hopefully you get the scholarship, you should really kind of like suss out what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Tahara?
I think I always start with barriers, right? Like what are your barriers? Let's talk about that. Let's get those out of the way. How can I help you show up as yourself 100% outside of anything you've got, like mindset? That's the first thing you have to start with. What is their mindset? Where are those barriers? Where can we connect those dots? And then how can you show up as your best self? And now let's talk about your goals, because you have to be good within yourself. You have to acknowledge, like, yes, I've had these things. I didn't believe that I could do this. I didn't believe that I could do that. We got to get you out of that first. You felt like you had the code switch. You felt like you had to perform a certain way and do all these other things. Getting them out of that space first, so that they can 100% be themselves and 100% move into their next goal authentically as themselves, is always the first thing for me. And so when we have those conversations, and I feel like I'm mentoring over 100 people right now, because that's how many people are in the chapters, but these are the same conversations that we have. And then, they get broken down into more intimate groups, but the theme is the same. You have to, as a mentee, if you want me or someone in my network to mentor you or to help you move into a better space, you have to move into that space first, right? Mentally, you have to be prepared to help yourself. And then we start measuring, okay, where were we the last time we talked about, and where do you want to go now? And what are your goals? And, really, like, what are your goals? Not the goals that you thought you had? What are your goals as your new authentic self? What does that look like? What could you do if you knew you couldn't fail? What does that look like? That's always the first thing that I kind of start any conversation with. Like, we got to show up. I'm going to hold you accountable to showing up. And I can tell when you're not showing up. I'm not going to push you further than you are ready to go, but I am going to remind you what you said. This is who you want it to be. And this is not who you're showing up as. This is who someone expected you to show up as. Let's stay back on track. And that's the best way to achieve anything, right? Is to be yourself.
Absolutely. I put your question in the chat that you just asked. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And anyone who wants to answer that question, I think that'd be amazing. Just throw it in there. Say it. It's badinage. Stir it up. Tonya?
So the one thing I wanted to say is that in starting those larger sessions and breaking them down, you had to find out and figure out where people were. What was their lifestyle? What were they doing? What was their situation? And then go down and drill down into what do they want to achieve and how can I help them and how can I help them get, to that goal. But then on the flip side of that, myself and others had mentees not show up at all, and then there's that. You have the resources, you have the tools to offer, but people have to put themselves out there and they have to do the work. We cannot do the work for them.
Yeah. You can tell them how to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All amazing feedback. We have several questions that just came through in the chat that I want to address. So give me just 1 second. Okay. This question is from Jana or Jana. Apologies if I mispronounce. In exploring how we evolve beyond historic power dynamics, I really appreciate Tahira's point about how people move into the mentoring space. Can our panel talk a bit further about the challenge of evolving systemic issues around building representation without further unduly taxing BIPOC and many community leaders? Maybe placing the heavy lifting of behind the scenes organizational support for public facing mentor leadership within the organization, less on the shoulders of the mentors. As Carrie has mentioned, both programs and mentee communities are seeking representation in their leadership, but we're all tired. We're all doing a lot of work. That's a really, really good question. How can we continue to build these very important initiatives in an effective way that doesn't unduly burden people who are already marginalized or doing so much of the work? Does anyone want to answer that? We have a few more questions as well. Any ideas? Well, I'll start. We need some people to be willing to help behind the scenes. We need people to help. How can we not unduly burden the BIPOC community? We can have more allies and accomplices helping to make us able to mentor while we are supported administratively, while we are supported peer-to-peer, and I can't even name all the rest of the ways to be supported, but I would say that's one way to help shift the burden a little bit. Tahira took her mute off, so I'm gonna let her go.
You have to do the work. Like, that's it. Like, the expectation of, that people of color have to save themselves consistently. We have to build for ourselves. We have to, if you are trying to create a mentorship program and you want to include people of color, you have to do the work before you announce that, before you introduce that, before any of that, because what you're doing is bringing those people into harmful systems. That's it. If the system is built on a supremacist basis, if you're used to Eurocentric standards, if you're doing all of that, if you're not addressing language barriers, and I don't mean language barriers in the sense that the mentee has to have language barrier. Sometimes, mostly, Eurocentric language is the problem. It's not everybody else. If you can't address that, food, if we're talking about wine and you're talking about food and drink and smelling wine, and you're not acknowledging that people come from different cultures and they're not going to call out the same thing that you call out because they didn't grow up in a Eurocentric space, then you're not ready to hold a mentorship program. Like, can we just be honest about why we're doing this, right? Like the things that we pass along over and over and over again. Are you doing this as savior? Are you trying to be a savior? Or are you doing this because you have done the work yourself as an organization? You know that you're bringing people into this space and it's going to be equitable for whomever needs to come into it, that your mentors are going to be equitable in whatever sense that means. If that means making sure that they're not trying to force people into a certain kind of language or to act a certain way or to dress a certain way, and that's their standard as your mentor. You have to, we have to start talking about culture, right? Like, we cannot keep leaving culture out of the conversation when you're talking about dealing with a bunch of people. You want to create more diversity, accept people as they are. Because let me tell you about diversity in the sense that a lot of people don't want diversity. They want tokenism. They want to say, I have all of these Black people in my program. I have all these brown people in my program. As long as they act and look and smell and taste and call out tasting notes a certain way. Diversity is accepting people exactly as they are. That is diversity. Everything else is tokenism, because you want a specific person who has a different shade to look like, talk like, taste like, examine like these standards. And you got to call out supremacy when it's being built. A lot of these programs are built around those harmful structures. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, it's why we put that framework on this conversation too, that's why we started the way we started. So there are a lot more questions I want to make sure that we get to. The chat just went crazy all of a sudden. So thank you all for jumping in there. I think I'm going to skip around just because I've got one right in front of me. This question's from Sophie. Just the idea of mentorship being more accessible to folks at different levels. And she's specifically saying, thinking of those of us who aren't business owners, wine directors, quite at our full powerhouse level yet, but have the experience of maybe an exam under our belts. Do we have any ideas as panelists of how we can create lateral mentorship or community in that way? I mean, the Mentor Circles program sounded like a lot of lateral community mentorship. So, I mean, I think that's one place to highlight. I don't know if y'all want to jump in. I'm going to pull up another question though. We have sorry, because I'm losing track of who's asking questions. So we have a question. How do you start a mentorship program or organization? That is a really big question. There are a lot of leaders here in this panel today that I am sure would be willing to talk you through that. If you are really interested in creating something, this is actually a question from Spain. So that'd be amazing.
Stop asking for people for labor for free. For a price, yes.
You're right. You're right, Tahara. You're right. Okay. And then let's see. Nicole wanted to flag the incomplete applications. When those incomplete applications happen, she says in a white supremacist framework, there is an over-evaluation of written communication. Could we consider that if someone does not feel comfortable filling out a long application with language they may not understand, that it is not a lack of ability, but potentially a language barrier? Could we consider offering a verbal application process to accommodate different learning styles? Why not a video?
I can answer that. We also do interviews as well with our candidates. So not only is it an application to have something that we can put together in the spreadsheet for our mentors to help go over and score, but we also follow up and have phone conversations or Google Meets to meet them as well, because we know that a lot of things can be lost. Not everybody is the best person to type out an application. Doesn't mean that they can't offer a lot of other skills. So But I know what you mean about the lack of filling out an application. But we really try to, especially Winequity, go through and make sure that we're helping as much as possible. And as far as that mentee circle for people that are in lower tiers that feel like they're too afraid to apply, you have to apply. Just apply. You're not gonna, get a yes or a no unless you do it. And we try to get together and do tasting groups, et cetera. And that's how you build confidence and, learn from each other, and ask those questions. And, Winequity loves that kind of thing. And unfortunately, I think a lot has been lost for us in our first year of meeting everybody because we've been in such severe lockdown, that I'm hoping that once we're open and we're available to get together and taste and meet each other in person, a dialogue will start. So
Yeah,
if that answers some of those questions.
thank you. That's great. We have about 4 minutes left. I think we got to all the questions that came in through the chat, and I don't see any Q&A there. So Nicole says, this is so good to hear. Food and wine is on a grand scale and in-person and personal experience. So thank you for addressing that. I'll keep an eye on questions coming in, but I'd love to kind of move us toward conclusion here because this time always goes so quickly. And I want to just do a quick speed round. At the same time of us doing the speed round, I'd love if the chat would put some key takeaways in from today, maybe one thing you're walking away with. This is another form of feedback, not only for the people who are on screen today, but for organizational leaders, mentors, and mentees. So I would really love if you drop some of your takeaways that you're walking away with today. To close us out, Tahara, I would love for you to, in a speedy way, say what your favorite part about mentorship is. And then I'm going to have each person answer this question.
Oh, that's easy. I get to develop leaders. That's how you dismantle systems. You create authentic leaders. You dismantle systems. The system won't exist soon.
Thank you. Carrie?
Well, as someone who's continually in school all the time, being a teacher, I'm also completely learning consistently as well. So, we meet lots of different people all the time, and I'm continually learning from all of you. So there's a lot to take away from that relationship.
Tonya?
Giving people hope and an alternative to where they are and letting them know that anything is possible. If you want to do it, you can do it. And it doesn't matter, your lifestyle, where you come from, your socioeconomic background, none of that matters. None of it is important. But for me, it always comes back to having someone that is relatable to you.
Yeah.
100%, 100%.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm seeing some comments in the chat as well. I wanted to thank all of you for taking part in this panel with me. I so appreciate being up here with all of you. Each of you are incredible, not only mentors, but humans, because we're humans first. Yes, and y'all know it, which is so great. True authentic selves, as Tahara would say. I am loving everything we're seeing in the chat. Thank you for putting that in there. This panel was really important, not just because it is for women of color on it, but also because mentorship has been a buzzword for the last, let's say 24 months. Let's just say it's been a buzzword for a long time. Mentorship has the ability as a word to create intimidation and exclusivity. However, when we model our mentorship systems on a personal level and on an organizational level around community, we are able to effectively elevate people, celebrate diversity, and create opportunities that didn't exist before. If you are thinking about being a mentor because those are things that excite you and you know you have something to offer, do it. Do the work. You don't have to have your name on a header or on a website to do the vital community work that we need as an industry. There are not enough organizations to handle the work we have to do at the intersection of mentorship and elevating the BIPOC and diverse communities that have been marginalized for a long time. If you're thinking about being a mentee, do it. We will learn from you and we will love you. Please do not let the idea of failure or any kind of preconceived notion about what it should look like get in your way, because we need you and we need your contribution to this industry. And tell your friends. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you for the chat. See you at the next session and have a great day. Hopefully I'll see some of you at the tasting and walk around. Tonya, Carrie, Tahira, and Batonage organizers, thank you so much for having us here today.
And thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Miriam.
you, everybody.
Tahira.
Canceled gooseberries. I love that. Was my favorite
I know, I saw
comment.
that.
So great.
Thank you all. That was a very authentic conversation and it was awesome to hear. The chat was phenomenal. So we are ready to bring on our next panel, which is Women Winemakers, the other 10%. I will start introducing the moderator and then she'll introduce the panelists. So Kristen Beeler is the editor-in-chief of 750 Daily and the editor-in-chief of Beverage Media Group Publications. Based in New York City, she has been writing about wine, spirits, and food for nearly 2 decades, and her work has appeared in GQ, Taste, and Food and Wine magazine's annual wine guide, among others. A member of Les Dames du Scaffier, she is also a judge at the Ultimate Wine Challenge. Kristen, over to you.
Thanks so much, Ella. It is wonderful to be here. I think everyone's still popping on. Great. I'm going to just wait 1 second for our panelists to pop on here. Hey, Maria. Great, I think we're all here. Wonderful, so we're just gonna start. I'm gonna introduce each of our 4 amazing dynamic women, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So yeah, we have these 4 women, very different backgrounds, making wine in very different parts of the country. Our panel today, we're talking about the other 10%, so producers not in California. Wine is made in every state, and the experience of producing wine in some of these lesser known regions is very different. Different business models, different ways to build your customer base. So these women all have shown incredible entrepreneurship in their very different businesses. First, we have Meredith Smith. She is the winemaker for Sawtooth and St. Chapelle in Idaho. Meredith's an Idaho native. She's helped elevate the state's profile across the US with her work at Sawtooth. Before this, she was a tax and real estate developer, gave that up to enroll in the viticulture program at Washington State University. She got her first harvest job in 2009 at Sawtooth, and then she became winemaker there in 2012. In 2016, she took on the additional role as the lead winemaker for Sawtooth and St. Chapelle. That increased her annual production from 125 tons to 2,400 tons of fruit. She currently works with more than 700 acres of grapes, which makes Sawtooth and St. Chapelle the largest producer in the state of Idaho. She also has her own 2-acre vineyard where she practices organic and biodynamic farming with Syrah, Mourvedre, Grenache, and Pinot Noir. Next, we have Jeremy Law. She's the vintner and co-founder of Salt and Pepper Wine and Jeremy Wine. She is a former US Marine and a Texas native. She has a successful career as a data management specialist in the railway industry. And she became obsessed with wine with her now fiance, Todd, on their first date to Fredericksburg in the Texas wine country. They launched the Share Me wine brand in 2014 with a mission to advocate for Texas wine on a national stage. As a Black woman and vintner, Share Me's vision is to inspire those who don't see themselves represented in the wine industry and to show them there's a seat at the table for them. Next, we have Maria Rivero Gonzalez. She's the CEO of Bodega Rivera Gonzalez with RGNY Winery in the North Fork of Long Island and the RGMX Winery in the Parras region of Mexico. Maria was born into a large family in Mexico, and she earned her degree in the international relations in Monterrey. But she found her true passion in wine in 1998 when her family planted their first vineyard in the Parras region. So she built her family's wine brand there, and then she convinced her father to invest in a Long Island wine venture with the purchase of Martha Clara Vineyard. She's been the CEO of Bodega Rivera Gonzalez since 2007. And finally, we have Shay Frechette. She is the co-owner and assistant winemaker at Frechette, which is a small production winery and tasting room in the Red Mountain AVA in Washington. She founded that with her husband, and then she founded the Sachet brand on her own in 2020, which focuses on reds and off-dry rosés using fruit from the Columbia Valley AVA. She's a South Carolina native, and prior to starting Frechette, she worked for Stanley Black & Decker, where she designed leadership development programs in 4 countries. She's an active philanthropist and community leader and a volunteer for too many organizations and boards to list. She is currently the chair of the board of the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber of Commerce, and she has served on the board of directors for the Red Mountain AVA Alliance. So some really impressive women. I thought we would dive right in and just start talking about some of the advantages and opportunities to producing wine in lesser known regions. I thought we would start with Maria. She, built this brand in Mexico for her family, had to convince her father to do that, to create that brand. And then she, when looking for another region, all her brothers said, why don't you go to Napa? Why aren't you looking in Napa? But she really wanted to be in the North Fork. And I know you surveyed a lot of regions before you made that choice, but Maria, can you talk a little bit about that decision and what attracted you to that region? Oh, you're on mute, Maria.
Yep.
Right.
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. Well, Parras is actually the oldest wine growing region in the whole continent, and no one really knows about it. So it has this deep history that attracts me very much to these regions. They all have an interesting history. We have a saying in Mexico: you're either the tail of the lion or the head of the rat. Right? And you can always, I feel you can do a bigger impact faster, and there's more room to create and be innovator in an underdog region. That's what I love about it. And the second thing is specifically in the North Fork, we're very close to New York, which is a very powerful market, right? So that's very interesting to me as well.
Can you talk a little bit about what's happening at Martha Clara? Because I know it's a relatively new project for your family. How are you converting it?
Yeah, so we bought Martha Clara 3 years ago. Part of the decision was we wanted to diversify in a different region, and I felt that the company was ready to take a bigger step and grow. As you mentioned, my brothers, I have 3 older brothers, by the way, so I always have to fight my way through decisions, which is good because I've learned so much. It's challenging at times, and they insisted, why not go to the more well-known regions, because of course it's safer as an investment, right? But we fought. My father was on board with me since the beginning, and we bought this place 3 years ago. Martha Clara had been in the Entenmann family, the bakers, forever. They were very well known, and really we rebranded 2 years ago into RGNY, and we gave it a complete spin. We went from they basically were a public garden where you could just buy your wine and sit down on the lawn, and we are all the way moving into private experiences, prepaid, very well curated. So we're really moving into a different direction. We just turned 2 years. We, of course, our second year during COVID was a disaster, but also an opportunity, and we're just fighting our way through a new region. We like to call ourselves the new kids on the fork. that stock, which I really like.
That's great. So Meredith, I wanted to ask this question to you too, because after you graduated, you had planned to make wine in Oregon or Washington, much more established regions, but you were home, you're an Idaho native, so you were home and you tasted one fantastic Idaho wine and you saw the potential of that region and decided to stay and make wine there. Talk about some of the potential that you see in Idaho. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. I'm honored to be here with everyone today. So for Idaho, as you mentioned, I really thought that I would be in Oregon potentially because I love Pinot Noir. And when I did come back from Texas and they tasted me on, it was a blind taste, and I asked him where it was from, and he said Idaho. And it was honestly the first time that I thought that I would stay in Idaho for wine. And I've always had wine in Idaho for years, but I just didn't know if that's where I wanted to start out. So when I tasted it, I thought, yeah, this is a place I want to stay. And when I started to do some research, I found out that there were a lot more winemakers that were moving into Idaho from California, from Oregon, and from Washington. And they had worked for companies such as Turley Martin, Stag's Leap, Chateau Ste. Michelle. And so I thought that this would be a good opportunity for me to stay in a growing area, a growing region, and establish my my presence there. It's a little bit harder if you move into Oregon when there's a whole bunch of a lot more wineries that are established. It's harder to make your place, I think. And so for Idaho, what I have found, the company that I work with, which is Precept Wine, we own vineyards and wineries throughout the Northwest. And so I'm able to taste wine and compare it against other wines within the Northwest. And I noticed that Idaho's wine there was a standout, and it was actually better than some of the wines that I was tasting. And with the winemakers moving in and seeing the potential, I could just kind of see the writing on the wall that I think that this was an industry that was going to take off in a short period of time.
And Meredith, share with the group how it has grown. You were telling me just the explosion in the number of producers in recent decades. Yeah, well, so in 2002, we had 11 wineries, and St. Chapelle and Sawtooth were some of the original wineries. By about 2007, the Snake River Valley AVA was established in Idaho. And then around 2008, it was showing around a $73 million impact for the state of Idaho. But by 2013, we were up to almost $200 million impact. And we have over 60 wineries today. So from 2002 to 2021, we've grown quite a bit. And I think we would actually be growing faster if we had more fruit. All of our fruit is completely contracted out. Wow. So I can't even find any fruit in the state of Idaho right now. That's an amazing explosion of growth in such a short time. Yeah. So I wanted to talk also about in some of lesser known regions, you as a producer can be maybe more dependent on your local community than in some more established regions, both for community support, but also as a customer base. So I wanted to kind of explore the idea of how you become embraced by your local community and how critical that can be to your business success. And I wanted to ask Shay to share her story, because she moved from California to Eastern Washington, where her husband had family. And how did you become so embraced by your community, and how did that help you with Frechette and building your business?
One of the things that I love collaborating, and that was one of the things that I just wanted to do. And I got out into the community and started looking for ways that I could collaborate. And I also started to learn the needs of the Tri-Cities community. I went through a program called Leadership Tri-Cities, where it really opened my eyes on where are the needs here and how can I contribute. And there were other leaders who also saw these needs. And, so that was one of the ways that I started collaborating, not so much as for wine, but just how do I start to contribute to the community that I'm in. And I think that through those collaborations and through those relationships, the leaders just kind of started to support each other. I'm buying from their businesses, they're buying from my businesses, they're telling other folks about me, I'm telling other folks about them. And it wasn't too difficult, because the Tri-Cities is a community that is a giving community anyway. So and my husband had, he grew up here and he had a lot of friends that were just like, "You're new. I know exactly what you can help us do."
Because when you moved there, you didn't have, I mean, you had family, your husband's family, in-laws, but you were completely new to the community. You were also completely new to the wine industry. So that was, I mean, that was a pretty steep learning curve.
It was, but I noticed that one of my BFFs is up here, Emily Haynes, and she's making wine in California, but she was a winemaker here in Washington State. And it's the panel before talked about mentorship, and folks like Emily were folks that were just like, "Oh my gosh, you're new in the wine industry. Let me introduce you to people. Let me send you over some wine to try and let you know what vineyards this is coming from." And so that was something that I love listening to that last panel, because that was something that opened my eyes too, and actually reminded me to be more deliberate about connecting and helping to make connections for other people.
And just share me, when you started your brand, so you're a Texas native, you weren't new to Texas, but you were not from the wine business. Can you talk about how you created your business and how you became embraced by the Texas wine industry and the importance of TexSom in your journey?
Yes, of course. So, like a lot of people, when you first start in wine, you're like, you become this enthusiast, right? And Todd and I, my fiance, were really challenged in the fact that, Texas wine there was nothing to Texas wine by someone who was on the outside. And so we took that as a personal challenge. We came back to Texas and we had a really grassroots effort in getting to know the people in Texas wine. Because Texas is an up and coming region, people sometimes are not as open to new people coming in. And so Todd and I spent about 3 years literally traveling the state of Texas, meeting with winemakers, growers, and industry leaders, and building those relationships and letting them know we are here to join all of the hard work that you have been doing. We want to be a part of that. Our heart is true. I am who I say I am, all of those good things. And then, Texas is very much, oh goodness gracious. We're still segregated in certain parts. And so I have to do even a little bit more of, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. And letting different farmers and things of that nature and leaders see that, hey, you know what? She is one of us. Just because she doesn't look like us doesn't mean that we should embrace her. And so because we took those 3 years, we have been embraced by the industry. And I'm not going to say everyone, but the people that matter and that make a difference, who have opened doors for us, and gave us a seat at the table, some tables, that has been so important. And so, Shay, when you're talking about building those relationships, it's the most important thing, I think. So that's here in Texas. But then when it comes to TexSom, I went to my first TexSom in 2018. And at that time, I wasn't really being embraced by the wine industry. The Dallas wine market is a very harsh market, but it's a good one to learn it, because you get your butt kicked. But I was just having a really hard time and thinking maybe I shouldn't be in wine. At the time, I was selling other people's Texas wine. And I went to my first TexSom and I was literally embraced by the people there. They saw my vision. They knew what I was about. They told me to keep going. And, I could have given up in wine in 2017, 18, whatever year that was, but I didn't, because TexSom and the people that I met there from around the world were so encouraging and so you got this, keep going, in a way that I hadn't experienced in Texas at all. So I will forever be hollering the praises of TexSom.
Well, and Sharmi, tell everyone about, I love your story. You guys are truly bootstrapping it. First of all, you still have day jobs. And this is your baby that you're growing slowly. It's still kind of small production, but you have big dreams. Talk about what you're producing and your volumes and how you're doing it.
Yeah, so right now, our first wine was a Riesling, a Texas Riesling, I know, but it turned out beautifully. We have a Montepulciano Rosé. We have a Roussan Marsanne Viognier blend. We have a Tinta Trigue National in the barrel, and we are about to bottle our Malbec Sangiovese blend. And so it's all small productions. All of these are less than 100 cases. But we are brand building and showing people what we can do here in Texas. And so now we're in that fun fundraising stage where, we're looking at production and all that fun stuff.
That's great. Thank you. So next I wanted to move on to talking about distribution strategy, which is different for producers in smaller regions. So, the pros and cons of building a really strong direct to consumer business, the challenges of working with a national distributor, is it worth it? And then the role of, local tourism and events in your own tasting space. And I would love all of the women to comment on this. Maybe we'll start with Meredith, because I know you're actually distributing 85% of your production in your state. Mm-hmm. And you have you have a large production. So you have a really strong retail presence. Can you share kind of your sawtooth strategy?
Sure. So Idaho is, I think in the early days, I would say early around 2007, 5, around there, it was difficult for the winemakers to sell their wine to Idaho, to the public in Idaho. And that has really changed quite a bit from when I started in 2009. Idaho patrons, they were just starting to embrace the Idaho wine industry a lot more. And now I would say all the restaurants are very pro Idaho wine, carrying wines for us and promoting it. And the people in Idaho always ask for Idaho wines, which is so great for the industry itself. I think with us, since we're with Precept, and Precept is national distribution, I have the ability to get my wines to back east in the Midwest, but I don't really have enough wine for that. And so I produce, like you mentioned, 85% of my production will go to Idaho, and 15% basically goes out to the Northwest. It's not often that I get wine in, sometimes I'll get it in New York and Washington, D.C., but not on a large scale. I do think that, I was in a production meeting yesterday, and they are looking to scale further outside of Idaho at this point. But I think one of the challenges that we are running into again is that we don't have the fruit supply.
And can you share your total production across both wineries?
Yeah, so for Sawtooth, it's about, I would say about 15,000 cases. And then for St. Chappelle, I'm around 125 to 135,000 cases. And then I also produce wine for Washington in addition to that. So I produce around 200,000 cases of wine, because I ship that wine out to Washington, and that actually goes into some of their can programs now.
That is a ton of wine.
Yeah, it is.
So Shay, could you answer this question? I know that your vision really is to become a destination. You're sending only 2% of your production outside of Washington. And I know you also had, you kind of, as you were learning the business, experienced some of the frustrations with trying to find a national distributor.
Yeah, well, we got our property. Our property wasn't for sale that we purchased on Red Mountain. There was nothing for sale when we were looking. So my husband and I went knocking on doors, begging people to sell to us. And after 4 no's, the folks who own this property said yes. So we live in the home that they lived in for over 20 years. We converted their storage shed into our tasting room, and then we built our production facility here. And we have our estate vineyard we planted on the site. So we're spending a lot of time and investment creating this space that is home to us that we want to share with guests. So our vision is to be a destination with stellar views and high quality wine and amazing service. And so, but when we first got into this, the idea of working with having our wine and retail space was very attractive. And we wanted to build that market more. So we were participating in trade events, and I just really didn't have the most positive experience. Although the folks in my industry, like my colleagues, other wineries and winemakers, were such advocates. And when I say advocates, I mean advocates like, oh, you need a pump, here, borrow ours. Oh, you need pick bins, here, borrow ours. I mean, that really putting their money where their mouth is, and just being resourceful and support. But when I would go to these trade events, it was almost like, it was so embarrassing for me, because I would stand behind this table and I'm smiling, and folks just wouldn't come over, almost to the point where I would walk over and just chat with the other wineries there, because no one came over. And sometimes when the folks would come over, it was almost just like, oh, my boss told me I need to come over here. I had one experience where I was a part of an event, and we paid for trade folks to come out. And one of the folks just said, I was like, oh, well, how was your trip? Thank you so much for coming out. And he said, well, I'd rather be talking to one of the winemakers. And I was like, okay, I'm going to focus more on, we're going to craft this vision for inviting folks to come to our space and focus more on the direct to consumer channel. And I'm so glad we did. I look back, and those experiences were embarrassing for me personally. The one in particular, the gentleman that made that comment, like, really hurt my feelings, and it impacted my experience for the rest of that event. But there's some lessons learned from that. I was so driven to really grow our direct to consumer market. And it has been the best decision that we could have made for Frechette and Sachet Wines. So as you said, Kristen, most of our wine is sold through our tasting room, through our wine club, and our website. We ship to just about 15 states. And the retail spaces we work with are so cool. They're mostly small family owned, just like us. And we frequent those places. We go in and we train their teams. They know our story. They meet us. They meet myself and my husband. They meet our son, Jaden, who's 8. And so they're very capable of sharing our story and sharing our brand with folks who are walking into their restaurants and their retail spaces. So although it was a very hurtful experience for me, I choose to look at the learning, and I choose to connect with the professional trade individuals who are very open to seeing someone like me in this industry, and who are open to bringing my wines into their space and sharing it with folks.
Right. Yeah. And just the benefit of being able to sell direct. It's more personal. It's more, you're not having to deal with the middleman. And Shay, what is your production between Sachet and Frechette?
So we are at about 2,500 cases. We'll get up to, our vision was 2,000 cases, and we're kind of creeping up. 3,000 cases, that's where I'm calling it. No more than that, Kristen, mark my words. 3,000 cases, that is it.
But I think
you
mentioned you're still running out of wine. So you might have to increase that. You'll have to see. That's great, thanks. So Maria, I wanted to ask you that question too. I know you're still sort of figuring out what your kind of distribution route to market channel is going to look like, and what your events space is going to evolve to. But how do you see that shaping up for RGNY?
I'm sorry, I lost you for a bit on the last part. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry, just how do you, I know you're kind of still figuring out what your distribution strategy is going to be. I know you want to be in New York City restaurants, but you also really want to build up a strong local, cellar door sales is really important to your model. How do you see that for RGNY? Yeah,
it's been, I think we're still learning. Mexico was clear because you need a distributor, because the consumption habits are so different, and it's the consumption is of course less. So it's you have to go through the distributor and the expert so that people will actually buy you, right? Here, when we grabbed Marta Clara, before RGNY, they were doing everything. So we kind of just grabbed everything and went with it. And now I'm kind of exploring and literally going area by area, understanding understanding it as a separate business. We do almost 70% of the sales through the tasting room. So we definitely are experience driven. And the brand is very much driven by the experiences and the curated experiences that we can give. We are very much about being didactic and teaching people about wine and teaching them that it doesn't have to be something very complicated, that it's very accessible. We've been doing a lot of sending the experiences home via e-commerce. So we do these like blending sessions that you get a box of a blending session and you can try to blend and then you compare to our blend. And we give you all of the information within it so you can really like get into it and get your hands dirty. But still, I think distribution is necessary in terms of exposure, especially when the brand's so new and a market as powerful as New York. I think you need to figure out to find your niche. So that's where we are right now. We only just started distribution this month because COVID, we were going to start last January and COVID hit and that was a big mess. We're very excited. We've been receiving a lot of good feedback that people are actually accepting local wine. All of this I love New York situation, I think rubs off on people. We are certified sustainable, which also really helps in a market like New York. And we're very much into innovating and doing orange wine, but the very old school way, or bringing in like a Mexican thing that worked and doing it here. So I think the exposure through a distributor also helps, but the end game, and I don't know if this is a rule for everyone, but the end game of selling direct to consumer is just you get a better margin, you can control what you tell people. It's the final client at your door, right?
And are you 15,000 cases at the New York winery?
So we can do 15,000 cases. We are actually selling like half of it now because we're ramping up sales. Hopefully we'll sell all of that at some point. We have the exact opposite in Mexico, right? We need grape in Mexico and we have more grape here. So we're figuring that out.
So how much of your grapes and your fruit are you selling to other wineries in the North Fork? What percentage roughly?
Half, 50%.
Okay.
We're producing around 7,000 cases for our GNY. And that's like a year. That's what we're selling about in a year, right?
Does that make you the largest vineyard holding in the North Fork?
As a vineyard, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has been to the North Fork. I've been there many times, and it's not that big, so that probably makes you.
Yeah. It's a funny region. I mean, we have more than 70 producers in a very short space geographically, right? Definitely Wolfer is the biggest in sales and they are my biggest client. But I think we are the biggest in terms of vineyard, yes.
So share your strategy with us. I know you're producing a very small amount of wine, but you do want to get that wine outside of Texas because you kind of want to help change the image of what Texas wine is. It's not all about cowboy boots and cowboy hats.
No, 100%. I was on I did a pitch competition, which I won. Whoop, whoop. And so I was looking at my numbers, and 50% of all of our sales since we released since September were outside of the state of Texas. And so that was so encouraging to me. Here in Texas, our state is so huge that you can put up a winery and you really don't have to do anything else after that, right? And you don't have a lot of competition in that way. 90% of all Texas wine is drank within our state. And it's so good that I want to change that narrative. The world of wine is so huge and Texas wine has a place in that. And so we are looking to build our name outside of Texas. Now, we don't want to stay there, meaning, all of our sales outside of the state. We do want to buy some land and build a winery and all of those fun things. But right now we're focusing on, getting the name of Share Me Wine and Texas wine and what we're doing outside of the state, because there's only very few producers that are outside of the state. And I don't think that it's right. Well, what is right, whatever. But, it's not fair for them to be the only representation of what's going on here in Texas, and people forming their opinion on Texas wine on just those few producers, when we have, 500 plus permanent wineries, so you're going to, say this is Texas wine from 5-10 producers when we've got a huge state. So we're looking to take on that, which is crazy in and of itself because we are so small, but I'm a crazy person. So we'll see how it goes.
And are you using distributors? Are you going direct to consumer? How are you reaching these out-of-state customers?
Yeah, so right now, the majority of our sales are direct to consumer. We just got on LibDib, and that has been really great. We had our first shipment to New York and California. We've been talking to several other distributors, but that's a very important relationship to us. We don't just want to get on a list. We need to be on, with a distributor who actually cares to sell the wine and, tell the story and, just really see us as a partner, not just as another wine to make money. We understand it's a business, but to us, it means more than that.
Right. So I wanted to ask about, what the experience is like being in a region that is undergoing so much change and growth and, quality improvements. A lot of, smaller regions are considered maybe less sophisticated compared to Napa or Sonoma. And the challenge of, maybe being an outsider and trying to raise the quality bar and raise the image of the region. Maria, for example, outsiders can be very threatening. You blast them into town with, a lot of success in your Mexican winery, but new to the region and big ideas and very different ideas about quality compared to some of the producers in Long Island that were maybe adding sugar. It's a colder region. What has that experience been like?
I think one thing that we saw since the beginning is the grape had a lot of potential. Grapes were great. We kept trying wines and some were great, some were in the middle, but they were very much alike, most of them. So one of the things that we discovered as soon as we went diving into the winemaking process is there was a little questioning in terms of the winemaking. This is what's done. This is what everyone does. You should do Merlot and Chardonnay, and this is what it's done. People were really trying to get a good, big red wine, which to me was very surprising because I come from Mexico where you get a lot of heat and you get these big, bright, bold reds, even if you don't want to. But here, everything pointed for a beautiful white or 1,000 beautiful whites or maybe skin contact, things like that. So I think one of the things that we've been pushing, and there's other people pushing, and I think we've kind of become a little wave of change in terms of winemaking, is we are just questioning things. The first red wine that we made, we had a mentor, a local winemaker that was helping us understand the ropes of the region and such. And he wanted us to correct the color. He was like, "You're gonna leave that Cab Franc like that, but that's too light." And we were like, "Well, this is what the region is giving us, and it's beautiful, and it smells like strawberries, and it's balanced, and it has a great acidity." But the norm was that everyone was doing what was expected of them, right? So I think it's been, on the one hand, it's been fun, just seeing everyone's faces when we say what we're doing and being very bold about it, because that's the only way that I know how to be. And it's been also inspiring seeing people that are actually buying into this challenge of questioning. And maybe I'm questioning a certain way, but someone will question it in a better way and make a better wine. And that's the end goal, is for everyone to drive the quality of the wines a little more.
And that, I'm sure that was received differently by different producers there. Did you have the experience of feeling like you were ruffling some feathers when you were doing things very differently and trying to raise the quality bar?
Yes, definitely. I mean, plus I'm Mexican in a very small Republican state. Well, not state, but town with state, right? I already had people that didn't really like me being there, I guess. The question about my insistence on looking at whites versus reds really ruffled feathers. And especially because I was very insistent, not only on your traditional like Sauvignon Blanc, which is a very logical grape for the region, but I was more insistent on maybe Viognier and these like other varietals that are not as common. And I think part of it is they're afraid of the market. They're afraid that they won't be able to sell it, or how am I going to sell it? Instead of saying, let me make the best wine possible, because that's what's gonna sell, right? So I think definitely we've ruffled some feathers, but we've also gained some good friends along the way, and it's been fun. We've experimented quite a lot. We've done. Marta Clara was doing 26 different wines a year, which to me was insane. We started doing 8, and then we've done pretty much between 8 and 10, but not all the same ones. So we've experimented quite a lot, and that's my favorite part.
So Meredith, I know you have confronted this too. Just the idea, it's so important to you to have the Snake Valley AVA be as high quality as possible and constantly raising the bar on quality. And you've always been advocating for kind of outsiders to come in and critique the wines to kind of add new perspective and share expertise. Can you talk about that experience with the Idaho Wine Commission, bringing in all the California producers to critique your wines?
Yeah, so when we early on, so I started in 2009, and in the industry, most of the winemakers were male. So there was a group of male winemakers, not very many female winemakers, which is completely opposite from where it is now. 85% of the winemakers in Idaho are all female. And when we got together, which is unique across the United States, and we always get calls all the time about why are there so many female winemakers in Idaho, and I can't answer it other than that we love Idaho and we think there's a great potential. But anyway, so when we started out early, and we tried to get the group together to have discussions on the quality of wine. And what I noticed when I first started in the industry is that no one was really willing to share information, and I thought that was kind of odd, because I thought that's how you grow, is to share and collaborate. And so at the time, I was the assistant winemaker to Bill Murray, who was a winemaker down in California for Acacia and Bouchain, and they had done the collaboration. And so we set it up at our winery to have the first meeting there to talk about wines. And it really didn't go very well, because winemakers don't really like to be criticized on their wine, critiqued. And but it's always good to be critiqued, because it's how you learn, and you need to be critiqued. And so when we sat down, the first couple meetings were a little bit contentious, when some people would call out wines. And but as the years had progressed, more and more people we met every year and tasted wines. And now annually, it's an annual event. We all get together, we bring our wines from the vintage, and we all taste. It's a little bit more, I would say, it's not as open to critiquing. They do it in a little bit better format, I think, than we used to when we first started, but nonetheless, very beneficial for the industry. And then once we because from our perspective, it was like any wine in Idaho that goes outside of Idaho, if it is not good, it's a representative of Idaho itself. So we all need to kind of raise the bar. And once we had the wine bar raised, and other winemakers were moving in and raising the bar too, then we moved towards the fruit. And I started a grant program where I was collecting information from vineyards throughout the state of Idaho. And because I wanted to create a database on how we can, because in my mind, it's like, to produce the best wine, you've got to have great fruit. So I went down there, but what I did find, I ran into it again with the growers. They were not, I couldn't get them to come on board and share information. But finally I was able to, and even oddly enough, the vineyard that I sourced from, I was like, just share your information. So finally, but I was able to get about 8 on board, and we collected information. And so then we have also brought in outside help from Washington and California viticulturists to come talk to us about the fruit. And we do the same on the wine side. And this happens annually. And the viticulturist now, he's from Washington, and it's Joel Perez. Shay, you may know him. Well, he comes to Idaho now and consults us, either individually or as a group. We have vineyard seminars. So what I've seen from this time that I started in 2009 to where we are now, the industry together is working as a big collaborative group to raise the bar to get to, where everybody wants to be.
And so what have you witnessed in terms of style changes, quality changes, or just different practices in the vineyard or in the winery that are making a difference in that?
Okay, so some of the things that I witnessed early on were the faults and flaws in the wines that are pretty much going away. They were a lot more apparent in more of the wines, and now that percentage is very low, and I don't really see it as often anymore. And I think that's a big deal. As far as the fruit, we've really honed in on the watering and the nutrients and the timing of those, and to drop fruit timing. And so we're trying to get the quality of that to the point. And so and even yields too. Some of the yields early on were a lot higher than what I wanted to see. And so it's just kind of little incremental steps along the way that have changed the quality. And really the quality is from when I started in 2009 to where we are now, there's been a big change.
Meredith, I also wanted to ask you about fruit wine.
Yeah,
a lot of states produce fruit wine, and they're considered by a lot of the trade to be maybe, people might turn their noses up at them, but these wines can actually be really complex, really balanced, and really high achieving. Can you talk about your fruit wine production?
Sure. So when I was working with Sawtooth, I was at a Fred Meyer and I was doing a tasting, and Precept had just purchased Saint Chapelle. And so I was helping Saint Chapelle at this tasting. So I was pouring one of my high-end reserve tasting room Temperneos, and then I had this soft huckleberry, which is sweet huckleberry wine. And this lady came up and she said, I want to try your wine. And so I said, well, of course, you want to try Sawtooth? And so she tried it and she was just like, no, tastes like vinegar. And I thought, well, wait a minute, this is like my tasting room wine. And so I tasted her on the huckleberry and she loved it. And and then right at that moment, I got a text that said, do you want to be the winemaker for Saint Chapelle? And I thought, oh my gosh. And so I tasted it with her. I thought, well, I'll taste this and see how this tastes. And it dawned on me at that moment that, and I already knew this, but there are so many different palates in the world. And oddly enough, there is a very high sweet palate in the United States. And I didn't even realize, until I got over to Saint Chapelle and started making these sweeter wines, the volume of sweet wines that are being produced and sold. And so, and one of the ones that I really took on right away was the soft huckleberry, because to me, it was a bright red color. It was very sweet and syrupy. And I thought, this just isn't where it should be. So I changed the color. And now it's a beautiful kind of rosé, they're, pink, salmon, those type of colors. And we do make it with huckleberries from the Northwest. So I buy thousands and thousands of dollars and pounds of huckleberries and mix with this wine. And I actually really like it. I think, it's, for me, it's not a wine that I drink every day, but I wanted to make it the best wine that I could make for that particular consumer. And that's what I set out to do. And our production for that, I mean, I just bottled about 25,000 cases and they want another 7,000 cases of it before the end of the year. So they're trying to shove it in right after harvest. So it's amazing to me, the volume. And that's the wine that they want me to scale.
And that's sold mostly at retail within Idaho.
Yeah, so most of Saint Chapelle is mostly sold through distribution, whereas Sawtooth is mostly DTC.
Okay, so super interesting. So I wanted to ask everybody about, you know, the experience of being a woman in the industry and some of the challenges of that. I know Maria, who was born into a Mexican family, as she mentioned, she has these 3 older brothers who are involved in other parts of her family's business. And this just wasn't a path that was expected of you. You had to really convince your father to trust you. You know, can you share a little bit about what that was like, choosing this path as a woman?
Yeah. I mean, I come from a big city in the northeastern part of Mexico, but still it's, I come from a very tight society where I guess the paths for women are pretty much what they are, and it's expected of everyone to kind of follow them. Same for men. I think there's very little room to wiggle in terms of you wanting a different direction for your life. And the funny thing is, I don't think I even set out to be or do something different. I just I graduated college. My father had a wonderful wine that he was trying to finish by himself. And I thought it would be a great way to start a business. I did know that I wanted to do something by myself and be an entrepreneur. And he said no. I didn't really listen. And then I think he finally saw that I was serious about it. And he said yes. It was a dance as to how far I would grow and how far he would let me grow. I think in the beginning he was like, okay, she'll get married soon and she'll have kids and she'll get over this and just give me my wine back. Little did he know that I was really gonna love this and go for it and try to understand it and figure it out in Mexico in a difficult market, because really Mexican wine wasn't being sold back then. At some point, I think he finally opened up and he started actually sharing his advice and being a mentor to me. He's a successful entrepreneur himself. And I pretty much take a lot from him. I'm my father's daughter much more than my brothers. So I think when he figured that out, he and I really aligned fast. However, I think the professional credibility in terms of the more complex things, the strategy, the financials, all of these things, I think I still really try harder to have credibility in those terms, and to I don't know, it takes a lot more to convince them. I need to be better, I need to be clearer, I need to present it in a better way, I need to or at least that's how I feel, right? I feel like I constantly have to give a little more in terms, so that and again, they're still in Mexico. My brothers live in Mexico. They have a lot of beautiful children, and they're still living that life where men are the only professional relations that they have. They have very few with women. So I'm still the little sister, right? I do think, and I think I told you this, Kristen, I think that when we bought New York, to me, it felt like the final vote of confidence. It was like, okay, we're making an investment as a family. I'm going to live in New York by myself, and this is it, right? So it's been a nice balance, I guess. On the other hand, it has made me better. It has to, because I need to learn more. I need to learn how to learn faster. So it's it's been good for me.
What about the experience of being a Black woman in the wine industry? Shay, you touched on it briefly. I mean, I question, that trade event you were referring to, how much of that was, you being a newcomer, you being an outsider, how much of that you think had to do with race? What has that been like? Or what have you observed?
Gosh, you stumped me there. It wasn't, is it because I was Black? I'm Black? Is it because I'm a woman? In the moment for the one when the gentleman actually just said like, oh, I really was hoping to talk to a winemaker. I did question. I was like, well, why do you look at me and just assume that I couldn't have been? But I mean, I wasn't in his head. I tried not to, make a bunch of assumptions. My brain was just like, I can't have him take my joy, and I can't let someone else see that a comment was made that took my joy. So I was in my head and struggled with that for that event. What I will say about, for me, I was inspired to step up my game as a winemaker because I saw other Black female winemakers. And that to me and I hadn't seen Black female winemakers in this space at the time that I became a winemaker. And so that to me was really inspiring. And I think it was eye-opening for me because of what the image that I had always seen of what a winemaker looked like. So so that was inspiring to me. It was a little it was my experience in like Washington wine has been a very positive experience just within my industry, within like the Washington Wine Commission and the other wineries in the area. And I will say that, for the most part, I think that there are some wineries that make a deliberate effort to be inclusive and to promote diversity. And I think there are other wineries that may not even think about it, that just go along their way, or or may not think about it. But I guess internally I've felt that because I'm Black and because I'm a female, I may not have had some of the opportunities, early on for, like even purchasing barrels. And, after my experience with trade, I would have, my husband's white, he's a white man. And I would say to him like, well, you do this, or you go. And he's just like, no, you do it. Like, you go, you do it. Especially for like sachet. He's like, you would negotiate those contracts. And we would have that conversation on like, well, who's the person that would probably get in it. But he's always been very empowering and just like, you are the face of Washington wine. Like, why not? So I think he saw things a little bit differently. And that was kind of frustrating for me too, because I'm just like, you're not seeing a reality. Like, you're not seeing like what I'm seeing. But I think for him, he refused to fall into this space of a Black woman cannot be ahead of a wine brand. A woman cannot be ahead of a wine brand. So I guess my experience has been, I've had some positive and then I've had some negative. But for me, I know there are women in this industry. There are women who are in the vineyard who should have better leadership roles. There are women who are foaming at the mouth to start a brand and may not have had the opportunity. And that's why I appreciate forums like this. And that's why I appreciate those of us. On that last panel, they talked a lot about mentorship and helping to influence and make change. And I wholeheartedly believe that it's forums like this and us and our advocates who can help make sure that you can see BIPOC faces and create those opportunities for minorities.
And Shay, when you talk about different wineries that are promoting diversity, do you mean in terms of who they're hiring, or how they're kind of what customer they're trying to attract and how they're kind of structuring their tasting room and their experiences?
I would say like there's like my neighbor Kiona, if you would go back onto their blog, if you were to search their blog, you'll see that they're they're just like, well, hey, we're a white family and this is, you know, we think that there should be more diversity, and here's where we're starting. This is how we're doing it, and they put their money where their mouth is, and they've always been an advocate for me and for us from the moment we stepped into this industry. You know, they're the ones that when someone's wanting to purchase their wine, they'll go, well, you know, Shay is right there. Did you ask them? You know, and so that's an example of when I say that there is another, you know, other wineries that step up and do things where they're just like, you know what, we see that there is an opportunity for more uh, you know, venues within our industry to be more inclusive, and we're gonna call that out. We're gonna say something about it, and you know, we might get some haters, but you know, we're gonna do the right thing. So that's one of the examples that I would share.
And Jeremy, your fiance is also a white male. How do you feel like your experience is different from his? Because you're both entering the wine industry at the same time. You're both, you know, building this brand together. How has that been different, if at all?
Yeah, you know, for Todd and I, so Share Me Wine, I own Share Me Wine 100%. And Shay, I can totally like empathize with you on being in that place where why needing to not use Todd, but like, you know, I don't think you're going to listen to me, Todd. This is what you need to say or whatever. And, you know, it's not how it should be. And people have realized, you know, Todd didn't make decisions around here. It's all about Jeremy. You know, not about me in a conceited way, but you know, this is my company. You know, Texas is, you know, and I keep saying this, and I don't want it to be like a bad, you know, like a, you know, like people are not trying to change or whatever, but there are places in Texas that are still very segregated, places in Texas that I can't be alone. And so I've had to really find those people who advocate for me specifically, you know, when it comes to like going to different vineyards, because where our vineyards are, you know, old farmlands and whatnot. And they've been so kind in that. Texas is lagging very much behind when it comes to any kind of you know, integration of, you know, different sorts of people. It's very much the good old boys club. And don't hear me talk bad about it, because I know some most amazing people in Texas wine, but as a whole, we are so far behind. And so that's where I get to share my voice. And because I have my own brand, I just get to do it loudly and boldly. You know, does that make everybody happy? No. Does it make everybody want to support me? No. I was literally talking to, so we're joining a co-op, and the owner of the co-op, I was talking to him this morning about that same thing. And he said, Jeremy, he's like, don't listen to anyone. You are doing awesome. You're doing amazing. You keep going. And so it's those kind of people that I lean on when it comes to Texas wine. Then those people who want to work with me, they want to work with me, and they want to see me succeed, and they open up doors for me, and you know, they talk great words behind my back where, you know, hey, I was down in the hill country and so was talking about you, you know, emails and such. So you know, I try not to focus on the negative of Texas wine, because there's so much amazing stuff going on, and I wouldn't be putting my hard-earned, you know, savings on the line to really push it forward. But we have a very, very, very long way to come when it comes to race, when it comes to gender equality. You know, it's a bunch of big old head white men trying to, you know, show each other who has the biggest belt buckle. And so, you know, we're just fighting against that. But again, you know, I'm a strong woman. And so, I mean, you know, yes, is it hard? Yes, do I cry? All those things, but they're not going to detour me from what I believe and what I know and to be true in Texas wine, because we've got too much good stuff to be falling into that, you know, who's got the biggest belt buckle, you know.
Right. No, I mean, I'm just thinking this now, but it's so brilliant that you named your wine and your company after yourself. You gave yourself your own platform.
And that's exactly, I mean, I'm glad you even noticed that. Yeah, that was it. And it wasn't a conceited thing, but no, this is Share Me. My name means dear friend in French. And so it's fun to play off of that. But, you know, this is me, this is mine. And so how far I take it, it's because of me and the amazing people around me, not because, anybody gave me anything. I have wonderful mentors and things of that nature, but I do work very hard.
Right. So I wanted to ask you all what about money and what financial success looks like to you. I mean, Jeremy, maybe for you, it's getting to quit your day job one day. I don't know. Maybe for others, I mean, I don't know what, everyone, business is large or small. Is it growing production? Is it buying more land? But how do you benchmark yourself financially? And anyone can take that.
I'll start. So when I started in the industry, I was doing real estate development down in Texas, and I was making fairly decent money down there. And I took a job at Sawtooth for $10 an hour. And it might've been a $2 an hour. It might've been for 2 months. But I read somewhere that said, pay attention to what you pay attention to. And that's when I went into the industry. And when I first started, I didn't really have a goal set for financial income. I think my goal is more to get recognition on my wines in a big way. Financially, I feel like I've exceeded where I started, and I was not anticipating getting to where I am. But I just jumped into it. I paid attention to what I loved. And I think when you do that, you will be successful, both financially and just on a personal level. And so I don't really have a dollar amount. It's more, what have I achieved in that time? And what have I done to change things?
And Meredith, how about your own brand, your small brand that you're doing on your own? Is that,
yeah.
Are you still pouring money into that? Like, how are you balancing debt, growth, and
money and time? All just money, time. I did put it on my bucket list about 10 years ago to own a vineyard. And so I do, but right now I contracted the fruit actually to Sawtooth wants it because they don't have some of the fruit that I have in my vineyard. And so I'm making some wine for them out of my vineyard, at least right now.
Okay. Do you plan to create your own brand with that at some point?
I do, but I don't have a label, and a label is tough. So I don't think I'm there yet because I'm so busy trying to figure out Sawtooth and St. Chapelle. I really haven't had a whole bunch of time to focus on my own vineyard. And I mean, I planted my vineyard right before the job for St. Chapelle came along. And so I thought I was going to have a lot more time to focus on that vineyard. But when the St. Chapelle job came along, it was really difficult. Full-time job, kids, just like everybody else, it's hard to balance it all.
Anybody else want to answer that one? Maria?
I think, and I might be wrong, but I think most people that are in the wine business define success in a more integral way. And I say that only because I think it's not the best business to be in terms of money. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of passion. So I think at least for myself, I definitely define success in a more integral way. It can be very noble and very enjoyable, and that's an important part of it. I work for my family, so of course I do have a clear path in terms of what they want or what they expect from this business. And more than making a lot of money out of this business, their interest is in actually keeping land in different parts of the world, ideally, in a healthy way, and of course if it's making money, better, or at least if it's feeding me and my future family, then we're all happy. But the intention is that, right? RGMX, RGNY, probably RGPT, Portugal or Italy, or that's definitely the dream, and that's how I would define my professional success in this project.
Shay, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, for me, mine, I want to be able to pay for my son to go to college. He's almost 9. And, my and financial success for me is when I can invest and if I lose those investments, it's not, it's not going to take me to bankruptcy. My grandmother worked in a field all her life in South Carolina, between South Carolina and Florida. And one of the things I want to do is buy property there and start a farm for farmers markets in her honor. So when you talk about like, I don't know if that's a bucket list thing. It's a goal that will come to fruition. But Frechette has to be in a position that it can purchase land and start that business. And then I also want to start another business here in the area, just from an economic development standpoint, for a town that's right next door to the ABA here. I just think it's a town that the residents there deserve more, and they deserve business that brings in some revenue. So success to me is when I can do those things, when I can make investments that make a real difference. And it doesn't, I don't lose everything.
Right. And have you reevaluated, I don't know how you're looking at debt, even your pricing strategies, so that you kind of have a game plan to how to get to that point, like when you can actually purchase your own vineyards, and what's your timeline?
Well, so I just purchased 5 acres on Red Mountain last year, and then I'm in contract to purchase 5 more right now. It should close in like a week. And so for us, we'll have almost right under 20 acres on Red Mountain. So, those are just kind of those sort of goals that are leading up to other things. But the other business I want to open has nothing to do with wine. And then the land is in South Carolina. So I do have plans on, what financially we need to look at. I'm already looking for property and just making some connections of other folks who are really into land ownership, especially in the South, because there's deep-rooted history there. So I'm definitely working on it and have some plans.
I loved your story about how you and your husband and your son were living in California, and you were trying to decide if you're going to move to Washington, where he's from, or South Carolina, where you're from. And didn't you flip a coin or something?
We did. So we were living in California, and we wanted to move closer to family. Well, my husband suggested we move closer to our parents to start a family. And I assumed that it would be my folks in South Carolina. And I guess he assumed it would be his parents here. And we just we argued and just could not get on the same page. And neither one of us were giving in. So Greg just says, you know what? Let's leave it to fate. Let's flip a quarter. If it lands on heads, we move to Washington. If it lands on tails, we go to South Carolina. And I was like 2 glasses of wine in. So I was like, great, yeah, let's do it. So he flipped the quarter, and that sucker landed on heads for Washington. I said best out of 5, but he was just like, no, we decided. And then I checked to see if it was a 2-headed coin, and it wasn't. So that's how Washington, that's how we got here. But I guess
you are not a sore loser. You have certainly made the most.
Well, I would have been making corn liquor and moonshine, would have been my backup plan in Mount Pleasant in South Carolina. So
Jeremy, what about you? About where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, it's so I love that question. We are, in the beginning stages where we literally have put our savings on the line. I've had to tell Todd, how much do you trust me? And he, very much, well, I guess we wouldn't be getting married if we didn't trust each other, but, put our whole life savings into this project. So much so I told him, you know what? All my student loans could have been paid off if we would have just went that route. But I believe in myself and what we're doing. But one thing that I see, within the next few years is one, yes, corporate America, gotta let it go. It's been so good to me, in the fact that I've been able to get this business off the ground, get Share Me Wine off the ground. We're planning our wedding. We live a really good life. And so corporate America isn't horrible all in and of itself, but my heart and soul is in Share Me Wine. But because we don't come from a family of one, money, or two, that has been in the wine industry, we are having to do all of this our own. So it's looking for grant opportunities, looking for, just different ways to fund this project. And so my hope is that in 5 years, we won't be sitting at this place. And I don't think that we will be. We want to grow Share Me Wine into something that's generational, that's important to both Todd and I. I come from a family of nothing. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but, they have nothing to show forth. And Todd comes from a great family, but all they do is really work. And so it's nothing that is being passed down. And so we want to change that narrative for our family. And I am always in awe of those wine generational families. I love seeing them. I'm fourth generation this, and their brand is, large and, all around the world and all of that stuff. And so I definitely would love that for our family. So, right now we're at that fun place where, we're playing games with our money, putting it all on the line. But that, if we win, it makes it all worth it. And if we lose, well, back to corporate America we go.
I have faith it won't turn out that way. So do you have individual investors, or did you guys take out a loan? How are you financing?
Yeah, so right now it's just Todd and I. We do have, a couple of small business loans. We are moving towards starting to do some pitching. And so we're looking at what does that look like, doing some just different kinds of fundraising. We've talked to the bank, and they totally understand what we're doing and what we get. And so that wouldn't be an issue. I don't want to take out a loan in that amount quite yet. So right now we're just looking at different ways to fund. The money is out there. I mean, it is. And right now people are trying to figure out how they want to fund businesses like mine. And so it's just making those connections with those people.
Got it. That's super exciting. So I want to make sure we save time for questions. So I just really quickly want to ask each of you what advice you have for young female entrepreneurs looking to start a brand, buy a vineyard, start a winery, enter the wine industry. What kind of nuggets of wisdom can you share from your experiences? Maria, do you want to start?
Sure. 3 things. I would say, learn how you learn. That was a big one for me. Everyone learns in a different way. Understand your process of learning, because you're going to take more in less time, and then try it all and see what fits. And the last portion of it is, if you're going to ask for someone's advice, listen to it. Believe it or not, you think you're listening, but you're not actually listening. I don't know if that makes sense. But if I had really, I go back to a lot of things that were said to me, and I was like, why? I know that now because I had to live through it, but they told me I should have listened. And I was there. I was just not listening.
Could have saved you a lot of time and heartache in mistakes that you. Meredith, do you have any wisdom to share for young women?
Yeah, I just say, believe in yourself and know that you can do what you want to do, and just go for it. And my dad told me, he said, you know what? Because I asked him, I said, Dad, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm going to quit my 6-figure income for $10. What do you think? And he said, here's the thing. If you go down that road and fail, he said, you're better off to go down that road and fail than not to go down that road. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did.
How old were you when you made that decision?
I was 40.
Wow.
I had to borrow gas money from my mom because I was getting paid weekly. And I was like, hey, Mom, I know I'm 40 and I'm wondering if you can fill up my gas tank. I get paid on Monday. And so just go for it. You'll do well. You will do well.
That's terrific. Shay, what about you?
I say like Meredith, I left a great full-time job with benefits. Yay for benefits and paid vacation. Woo, miss those days. But I will say, and I heard this on the last panel too, like you really do have to put in the work. When I worked, I knew I wanted to do this, so I enrolled in WSET with a full-time job, and I also worked part-time at a wine bar while being pregnant. And I didn't go to anyone. I knew the difference between like a mentor and like a consultant. And I felt like I needed to know something and put in some work before I asked someone to put in some time with me. So I think I would say for anyone coming to the industry, like especially if you're new and stepping in, is, do some of the work to kind of know a little bit of something, so you kind of know what to ask would be my biggest point of recommendation. And be in the spaces where you can get access to mentorship, like this forum. OMG. Like even this, so I mean, I'm just looking at folks who are in this industry who are answering questions in the chat. I mean, pay the price to come to an event like this so that you can just even connect with folks in the chat, and folks are giving out their, their info and being able to connect that way. So it's a little bit of just kind of, a little bit of work, and then seeing where a good match is for a mentor will be my recommendation.
Jeremy?
I think it's really important that you put good people around you that are only going to speak life into you as you walk down this road into wine, no matter which direction that you go, whether it's a brand or, becoming a somm or whatever. It's very difficult, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a woman of color. And so you need to put people around you that are going to speak life into you, especially on those hard days. I think that that's so important. There's been so many days I've thought, you know what, I can't do this. And people are like, nope, okay, Shermy, you've had your tear, now dry it up and keep moving, because this is bigger than you. So I think that is so important, the people that you put around, and finding those mentors that are on your wavelength. I've been able to have so many amazing mentors who believe in me and what I do. But I want to make them proud. And so I work really hard with especially with the information that they give me. So if people are giving you their time, and I have one mentor that gives me and Todd an hour a week or every other week. He wants more, but we're like, we can't commit to that. And he has helped us just turn our business around, specifically on like the business of wine. And so mentors are important, and just believing yourself. You really have to, no matter what anybody says. Okay, you think I suck, good to go. I know I don't. So
that's great. And the more I talk to all of you, the more I realize wine was not an obvious path for anyone here. And major career switches happened for everybody. And that's so impressive, the amount of like risk and daring and imagination that took. So I'm so inspired by all of you. Sarah, do you have access to the questions, audience questions? I don't know if they're in the chat. I haven't been following the chat. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you guys have just told such beautiful stories, and you've got just a lot of shout outs in the chat for all the work you're doing.
Are there any questions, or are people going to put them in the Q&A, or?
No, I think we might be at the point where we are starting the wrap up. So
great.
Everyone just loved all the stories that you had to share, and hopefully we'll go and support your wines.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much. I just enjoyed getting to know you on our calls prior and during this special 90 minutes together. So thank you so much to our amazing panelists, and to Sarah and the Baton team too.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. That was a great session. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Well, just a quick thank you again to our sponsors: Napa Valley Vintners, Laurent Perrier US, Bay Grape, Nomatica, Amram Cork America, Gabrielle Glass, Sonoma Broadway Farms, and 750 Daily. And for those of you who bought the a la carte tasting or the all access pass, we will see you guys at 3:30 p.m. at Sonoma Broadway Farms, which is super exciting, a little in-person event. And then I'm going to throw this over to Sarah, the co-founder of Batonage, to wrap it up.
So thank you guys all for being here today, and for what a wonderful 3-day stint this was. It's really hard to believe that Batonage is 4 years old. It began as a small idea and a series of conversations, and it was something that Stevie and I and the Bay Grape team threw together in Sam Sheehan's backyard in Napa, and now to see how it has grown as a forum, a community, a mentorship program, and a platform, it is both incredibly inspiring and completely humbling. Our stated goal has always been to chart a positive, inclusive way forward for our industry. By having conversations like these, ones that are celebratory, like the one we just had of incredible women doing things in maybe unthought of places, raising those up, and then having conversations that aren't easy either. Oftentimes ones that people weren't even having, centered around the unique challenges that women and those who identify as women face working in the wine trade, but stirring it up constantly. Over the years, we've expanded and grown with the help of all of you, our speakers, our organizers, our sage friends and advisors, our community, all asking questions, pushing, challenging, calling in, showing up, and joining. A really, really huge special thanks to our team, Katie, Rebecca, and Ella. We could not have passed the baton to a more capable crew. And we're so grateful to you for carrying on the flame and bringing your own fresh perspective to these conversations, and quite literally being the most able and capable people in this virtual space. So kudos to you three and team for carrying this on. Priya, Tonya, Mary, the ongoing work in building out the mentorship program, especially Priya, who carries so much of the workload and pushes this program forward on a daily basis. Cassie and Dee, who are a part of the work in making Batanash sustainable for the long term. I just thank you from the bottom of our hearts. To our community here, your individual donations and ticket sales and just plain spreading the word are the reason we are still here today. You've helped us build this from day one. And to our sponsors, once again, I wanted to as well thank the partners in our CAN collaboration with Nomatica, those who have supported the sales, Bay Grape Oakland and Napa, Tribeca Wine Merchants, Copake Wine Works, Harding's Market, Park Avenue Wines, Sunday Vinyl, A16, Olmsted, Gigi's, Graft, Three Parks Wine, Montrose Wine and Cheese. I mean, we just have spread the love all over these states, and we appreciate all of the support. And of course, to the talented Alicia Sommer for donating her beautiful image and talent to that collaboration. Money does make this work possible, enabling these programs, and especially future support of our mentees, as do the many, many volunteer hours from our team and speakers. Thank you again. We invite any of you who are interested in supporting this work going forward to reach out to us, as we're continuously fundraising as Batanash grows and becomes a formal 501c3. That paperwork is with the IRS. In the spirit of this community that we've built together, I thank you once again for being here today and with us these past 4 years, for contributing. And I can't wait to toast with those of you coming to the tasting later today, and to the rest of you who will be with us in spirit. And for anyone who wants to continue the festivities or networking, Bay Grape Napa is the official after party spot. There will be the Nomatica by Batanash cans on ice and no corkage on those for tonight. So with that, I just say thank you. And that's a wrap for Batanash 2021.
Thank you all. Great sessions.